Hey guys and welcome back to my channel. This is part 5 of What If Naruto Was Trained by Mihawk. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. Konohagakure. The first Uzumaki clan head with Uchiha blood and his team walked past the gate guards, who once again could be seen pretty much napping, which earned them an odd look from the kunoichi of the team. Naruto just walked past them before turning around to face the team he was assigned to lead. Ignoring the glare Lee had been sending his way since he ended the Fuma settlement, Naruto addressed the group of genin before his eyes. Our mission has been completed. You three are dismissed. I'll go and report on our mission to the Hokage. Naruto spoke calmly, getting a nod from Neji, a relieved sigh from Tenten, and no visible reaction from Lee. Taking this as their answers to his order, Naruto and Susei, who was on his shoulder, disappeared in a small cyclone of black wind and crow feathers. Lee continued to glare at the spot that Naruto once held even after the raven-haired shinobi left the immediate area. Neji, seeing the funk that his usually cheerful teammate fell into, decided he could help him out while getting stronger. A win-win. Lee, can I interest you in a spar? I would like to see how far I have come since our last match. The soft yet firm voice of his teammate brought the fuzzy-browed genin back to the real world and out of his dark thoughts. Recognizing the words that were spoken, a glimmering smile made its way onto Lee's expressive face. Immediately the green spandex wearer assumed the nice guy position. Of course we can, Neji-kun. Shall we leave for the usual place so that we may prove how brightly our flames burn? Neji cracked a small smirk, seeing that his old teammate was still there despite the sense of gloom that one could just sense around an emotional kind of guy like Lee. Nodding, the pale-eyed prodigy started to walk off towards Team 9's training ground to prepare himself for the upcoming fight. Lee's smile remained until he saw Neji was out of sight, where it was replaced with a sneer. Once I can defeat Neji-kun without use of the inner gates, then I will be coming for you, Uchiha. Then when I defeat you, it will show that my way of the ninja is far more superior to your own. Meanwhile, in the office of the Hokage, a sudden gust of crow feathers that came in through the open window came to a halt directly in front of Minato, who was more than aware of Naruto's impending visit. Waiting patiently for his son to come to view, the blue-eyed fire shadow leaned back into his chair. And finally Naruto came to full view, with his Sharingan fully alive and spinning as he stared back into his cage's inquisitive stare. The silent stare down continued for the better part of the next 2 minutes before Minato finally asked for Naruto's report on the mission. The mission was completed, with me destroying the entirety of the Fuma's settlement, though there were a few complications. The first was when Tenten was captured by the enemy and I was forced to save her, where I learned that someone had leaked our plans to the Fuma. Naruto ended coolly by blowing the bang over his eye out of his field of vision, though his eyes did narrow as he went over the potential people he'd target as potential traitors. He was sure that Suna was an obvious choice, but maybe it was too obvious of a choice to think it was them and then close the book. Minato closed his eyes as he went over what this could mean for both Konoha and the entirety of the Land of Fire. If it was true that Suna was working to weaken the Hidden Leaf, then Konoha would lose its only major ally in a time where nothing was certain, something he couldn't afford for his village's sake. That was why it was crucial that they acted after they went over every possible situation before acting and throwing accusations towards their neighbors in case no Kuni. What is your whole take on what happened on this mission as the commanding officer? Looking past his cage and out of the window and into the village down below, the raven-haired son of the Hokage ran his finger along Susei's sleek feathers. The Sharingan-wielding Uzumaki conveyed his thoughts on the matter. I believe that Suna is a believable option if you chose to pursue it, but I can't say for sure because something forcibly expelled me from the leader's mind before I could get any kind of intel out of him. Naruto informed his village leader with a hint of regret regarding his own failure. Yes, Suna is a likely candidate, but we must be careful with this because as it stands they are an ally, our only ally amongst the major villages. That still wouldn't stop them from dealing a blow to us if they thought they could get away with it. Minato conceded to the fact that Suna being the weakest of the elemental nations and would clearly like to get out of the basement. Nodding slowly, Naruto tried to speculate as to why Suna would do something like this when the risk far outweighed the reward. You said that you were ejected from the man's mind. I assume this was while you tried to use your Sharingan. Minato asked, looking for more information, and on cue when the word Sharingan left his lips, the three tomo in his red eyes began to spin lazily like they knew they were being mentioned. Well, I tried to take a peek into his mind when he said he knew that my team was coming, but before I could really make my presence, I was knocked out of his mind and then he was killed by some sort of internal brain damage. Possibly a seal. Naruto offered with a slight shrug that forced Susei to adjust to find a new roosting position on his shoulders. Minato made a sound that went like, as he thought what that could mean for this whole puzzle, and only came to one person in Suna, and that was the elder Chio, but Naruto didn't need to know any more than he did. After all, he was still only his Chunin. Sighing, Minato addressed Naruto once more with his eyes and his voice. Very well. You did splendid considering the unfavorable circumstances you were dealt with from the very start of this mission. You have done your village proud, Naruto. He spoke in a professional tone that would keep Naruto from finding his true feelings. Not to mention me, even if you don't see me as your father. The Uzumaki clan head simply nodded his head before he and Susei vanished in the same way they had entered the office, leaving Minato alone once more. We may not have any kind of personal relationship, son, but our working relationship is nothing short of phenomenal, and at least it is something. I can only hope there is a day where you can forgive us for our foolishness. Minato prayed silently as he looked at the sun that was just being covered by a large cloud hiding its brightness. A grunt escaped from Naruto's lips when he felt the jarring impact of a fist slamming into his chest. Taking the blow in stride, Naruto reached and grasped the wrist that was attached to the fist, but found that he was simply grabbing at a substitution log. The raven-haired nin furrowed his brow in agitation, since this was a repetitious happening in the spar Naruto found himself engaged in. Hearing the slight whizzing of a kunai cutting through the air behind him, the red-eyed Uzumaki brought his hand up into the sign of the ram, performing a spotless shunshin. Naruto didn't even need smoke to cover his movements, showing just how far he had come since he started training with the scrolls Shisui had gifted to him just before his death. My Naru-kun, you sure have gotten awfully fast. I see you really are picking up the gift that Shisui-kun had. A soft voice spoke as Makoto stepped out of the shadows provided by a tree on the training ground. Makoto's Sharingan watched as Naruto released the sign he used to provide his burst of speed. Naruto let a very Uchiha monopolized smirk cross his face, hearing the praise coming from his pseudo-mother. Of course I am. I can't let Shisui's wish go down the drain just because there are more things to try and hold my attention. Plus, being fast is always a nice ace to have up the sleeve, but I can get faster. That statement was completely true, because there were a number of shinobi throughout history who pushed the boundary of human limits when it came to speed, and two of those men were still alive in this time. Makoto nodded in approval, glad that her surrogate son was such a steadfast man that would stick to his beliefs, something that made for a great leader. And she just knew that Naruto would eventually become the leader he was destined to be. Slowly, the Uchiha clan head went through a series of hand signs that Naruto went through as well. That is always good to hear, Naru-kun. Now let us see how you picked up on the jutsu you asked for during our last session. Lightning release. Flash dance. Makoto and Naruto called out at the same time, performing the same technique. The lightning release. Flash dance was a technique that someone could mix with their taijutsu to strike their opponents with an extended range. This required that the shinobi or kunoichi to use an extreme amount of chakra control to create chakra lightning that would shoot out of their elbows and fists. Since both had the Sharingan, they could get the ratio down pat, but since Makoto's experience exceeded Naruto's, her lightning struck first, leaving Naruto to be struck across the cheek by an enclosed fist. Stumbling back a few steps, Naruto frowned as his hand gently touched the bruised skin on his cheek. Ah, don't look like that, Naru-kun. After all, I was a Junin before the clan went all haywire, and our frequent spars have only helped put me back in shape. Thank you for that, by the way. Makoto expressed her gratitude with a bright smile on her face. She had never felt better, and she knew it was because of Naruto's drive to be better that somehow had infected her as well. Naruto looked over to his partner for this spar, but instead of answering her gratitude civilly like any normal person would, Naruto decided for a more shinobi-esque fashion by throwing a fireball at the woman. Makoto's crimson eyes widened in surprise at the sight of a moderately sized sphere of hissing flames making a beeline for her position. Acting quickly, the Uchiha matriarch performed a spotless substitution, leaving a log to be roasted in her stead. Appearing right behind the person responsible for riffling off the fire release jutsu with an annoyed scowl on her face, Makoto glared at the two clan emblems on the back of his blue vest. Shaking her head sadly, Makoto made a small tisk, tisk Sound like she was chastising a child for doing wrong. Didn't anyone teach you that it is impolite to shoot a fireball at someone, especially when that same person is thanking you for helping them? Well, I guess that whoever taught me manners just skipped over that part. Some kind of teacher they were. I wonder where they are now. Naruto mused aloud, fully aware that it was Makoto who taught him his manners and that it would irk her to no end. A smirk made its way onto his face when his surrogate mother didn't have an immediate response. Oh, you little smart. I guess I will have to reinstall that sense of humility into that head of yours before it explodes from the swell. I can't have my darling little Naru-kun turning into some self-righteous jerk. Lightning release. Shocking inspiration. The female Uchiha shouted with a small, sadistic smile on her face as two bolts of electricity came from her feet and traveled towards the stationary Naruto. She smiled when she saw the shocking chains crawl up Naruto's back but frowned when the younger Leaf Nin didn't make a sound despite the pain that should have been coursing through his body. Before Makoto could make another move, Naruto's body was shrouded by a light, faint glow that alerted Makoto to what was a shadow clone that was preparing to do, and that was to detonate, but she was a step too late because the clone had already went off and ended itself. The Uchiha clan head was close enough that she was sent rocketing into a tree with an audible thud. Appearing before her in a shunshin with a kunai pointed down at her, Naruto spoke. Looks like I finally won, Makoto-chan. The smile on Naruto's face dropped when all of a sudden Makoto's body changed to a mass of lightning that scattered across the ground. Before he could react, his body tensed when he felt a pair of arms wrapping around his shoulders and the edge of a kunai pointed up under his chin. Now what was that about winning, Naru-chan? The raven-haired son of the Yellow Flash growled slightly, but in the end he relented to yet another loss to the elder Uchiha. Shut up. That doesn't matter now because we are starting again. With that defiant shout, Naruto once again shunshined out of Makoto's grasp and was already reaching for Twilight. Makoto watched Naruto flow lightning through his black, white, and gray katana with a smile because sparring with Naruto was the most fun she could find in the village and she was going to enjoy it. Nanabe's secret art. First hive. Following the feminine but energetic shout came a thick wave of black buzzing that came with the chakra-digesting beetles that the Jinchuriki of the Seven Tails was capable of commanding. Fu watched on intently from the air with the help of the wings that were gifted to her by her tenant that was keeping her stabilized in the air. The mint-haired girl watched on, opting to stay back to see just how her opponent would counter her beginning move of this spar. Naruto watched as his so-called slave fired a wave of chakra-hungry insects at him that reminded him of his time working with Shino of Team 8. Not wanting to become anyone or thing's lunch, Naruto went through the appropriate hand signs for the Uchiha clan's favorite jutsu of any element. Fire release. Grand Fireball. From the ravenet's open mouth spewed a massive ball of flames that easily overtook the wave of little parasites, leaving a lingering scent of burnt bug to fill the air. Sadly, the insects continued on like small, fiery kamikaze that were hell-bent on colliding with Naruto before they finally died from the intense flames. What an annoying, persistent batch of little parasites. Naruto thought as he used his 3-tomo Sharingan to even duck out of the mini-missiles that the bugs had become. Once the flaming nuisances had become non-existent, Naruto followed up with another jutsu abusing his absurdly large chakra reserves. Wind release. Drilling air bullet. Naruto's shout was drowned out by the sudden blast of wind that came from his mouth aimed directly at his fellow Jinchuriki with intent to incapacitate. Who Naruto knew had a lot of chakra herself, not as much as him mind you, but plenty in her own right. Luckily for the airborne, Tanned Kunoichi, she was already prepared for what was Naruto's typical combat style, using his massive chakra. Just a moment after Naruto launched his sphere of spinning winds, Fu had finished the sign that she needed for her jutsu. Water release. Gunshot. Fu cried out as a thin line of water came firing from her mouth before it turned into a sphere of water that rivaled Naruto's drilling wind. The resulting collision of water and condensed wind created a loud hiss, and a bath of water was quickly blown up into the air and scattered by a natural wind that blew across the land. Naruto remained stoic while Fu was grinning as they slow drizzle fell over the two. You know, Naruto-kun, you aren't the only one that has a ton of chakra to throw around and then some to spare. I can go at this all day, but I do have a leg up in Biju chakra control with Chome here. Fu bragged, patting her stomach, solidifying her claim as he green bug wings kept her afloat in the sky, acting as a constant reminder. As much as I hate to agree with my weaker brother's container, she does have a point. Perhaps we should start working with my chakra while we are still together, Ninjin. The dark but necessarily evil voice of the Kyuubi drew Naruto into his thoughts where he contemplated his tenant's suggestion. It was definitely an idea worth merit, and he wasn't exactly sure why he hadn't asked the Kyuubi for its chakra when he had been asking for information. Was he fearful of the massive amount of power the Kyuubi possessed even while being a shell of itself? I think that is a good idea, but we need somewhere more private than this village if we want to do such a delicate procedure. And are you actually offering to help me? Naruto asked the being of pure chakra, honestly surprised by this development because more than not the fox was lazy and outright just uncooperative, not willingly helpful. If Naruto was to look into the cage in his mindscape, he would be able to see the huge tick mark building its way across the giant fox's brow while he curled his lips into an angry scowl at what Naruto was insinuating. Why would he, an almighty being, be willing to help an insignificant mortal? It was just absurd. Listen here, you little sack of flesh. I am not helping you. I am helping myself because I will not let my container be weaker than any of my brothers or sisters' containers. Naruto rolled his eyes, ignoring the prideful rambling that the Kyuubi was currently going on about. If you don't want to take my word for it, I can always give you a demonstration. It really wouldn't be any trouble. Actually, it may be a lot of fun. Fu spoke tauntingly with a small smirk as a light cloak of green energy sprouted to life and surrounded both her right forearm and her wings. Before Naruto could try to deny her oh-so-gracious offer, Fu had already closed the distance and drove her shrouded arm right into Naruto's stomach, making him feel as if an enlarged Akamichi fist had smashed down and put all its pressure against his stomach. Fu looked at Naruto's face from the corner of her eye with a smaller, victorious smile on her face as she felt Naruto gasp for air hunched over her forearm. All she needed to do was pulse her chakra, a rather simple trick, and pow, Naruto was gone and sent flying, but first she needed to see if he would yield. Naruto-kun, I think it is best you forfeit before you get really hurt. A Bijuu's chakra is nasty stuff. Fu advised, letting nothing bleed into her voice except a tone of pure factual correctness. She frowned though when Naruto didn't even move from his spot, leaving her to wonder if he was okay or not. Naruto suddenly broke the silence with a small chuckle that Fu could easily hear, but she couldn't quite find any humor in Naruto's situation. Soon enough, Naruto's Sharingan eye looked right into Fu's orange eye, casting a very subtle genjutsu that he hoped bought him 3 seconds. No sooner than Naruto had done that, the sound waves entering Fu's ears became distorted. Don't worry, Fu girl. I will get rid of this feeble genjutsu right away. Chome spoke happily as his potent chakra easily broke his container out of the small Sharingan-induced genjutsu in less than 10 seconds, which was no time really considering the situation the two combatants were in. Fu shook her head, looking at Naruto, who returned to being stoic. You know genjutsu doesn't work on people like us, Naruto-kun. What you said earlier was right. You are a better Jinchuriki than I am. Naruto admitted, swallowing his pride with a smile. He then raised his hand slowly and tapped her on the forehead. But I just may be the better shinobi. Uzumaki Fuinjutsu. 6 station shutdown. Fu's eyes went wide in alarm when 2 bright circular orbs lit up on her legs that had the kanji for stop in them, followed by 2 on her arms, 1 on her stomach, and finally the one where Naruto's fingers were touching. Suddenly all the points linked together and the mint-haired Jinchuriki felt all the power suddenly leave her power, and she crumpled to the ground, conscious but incapable of movement, cursing as Naruto straightened out. Silence filled the space until there was an excited shout from the sidelines of the field right near the apartment complex Naruto and Fu inhabited. That was so cool, boss. You gotta teach me that move. Konohamaru shouted, his squeaky voice rising and falling in decibels as he shouted out his excitement. He had been there the whole time, watching the whole spar since the beginning, and he was definitely sure that his boss was the coolest shinobi in Konoha, at least. I will teach you that when you learn your elemental affinity. Then after that you need to learn at least 3 jutsu for it. Naruto lectured his little admirer with a stern tone, trying not to smirk when he heard how pathetically he was whining about not learning the super cool, paralyzing seal thingy, as he put it. Standing on a steady, thick branch that was extending out of a tree off to the side, the red-headed daughter stood there watching with a bitter smile as she watched Naruto treat Konohamaru like a younger brother. Deep down, however, Naomi knew that she could not blame Naruto for that because she knew all of the fault fell on them and how they treated Naruto. The violet-eyed Chunon's hand clenched around the trunk of the tree as a way to deal with the frustration of watching Naruto act like a big brother to someone else. That could have been her if she wasn't such a spoiled brat growing up and she hated it. The brisk shaking of her head had her vibrant, red locks swaying back and forth with the movement of her head as she shook away the more selfish thoughts she was having. No, this isn't right. I can think like this. Ni-san looks happy, but it still hurts to see what I could have had. I wonder what it feels like to be on the other side of that cool personality of his. Naomi thought longingly of created times where she was younger and Naruto was the big brother she wanted but didn't deserve, but that was just it. They were created by her imagination. Naomi was so far in her own self-indulgence that she failed to notice that the person in the forethought had appeared behind her in a silent wind shunshin. Standing there, Naruto wondered when she would notice him, and after a few moments Naruto realized that she wouldn't be picking up on his presence anytime soon. Looking up into the leaves overhead that let in beams of sunlight at random places, the Uzumaki clan head decided he had some time to kill. Silently hopping back to a tree branch extending out right behind the one Naomi was standing on, Naruto lowered himself into a sitting, cross-legged position. Letting out a melancholic sigh, Naomi slowly turned her body around only for it to immediately tense when she saw the sight of her brother sitting there across from her with his eyes closed, looking completely relaxed. Her jaw fell a few times as she tried to mutter out something coherent, looking down at her brother. Naruto cracked open one eye, hearing the commotion in front of him, only this time there was no Sharingan but his oceanic blue that had slowly been losing its cold glint. Brining her hand up to her heart, Naomi let go of the shocked sigh she was holding in as her body came down from the high of surprise. What are you doing here? Weren't you talking with the third's grandson? The redhead asked, trying not to shout in excitement. Internally though, there was a chibi Naomi dancing around like a fool, since it wasn't very often that she was able to talk to her brother in a one-on-one setting like this one, and she surely didn't want to squander this chance. Yes, I was. About an hour ago, that is. Naruto replied, taking amusement in the shocked expression that was plastered on his very expressive sister's face. He wasn't sure why, but he was feeling a lot less hostility for his sisters as of late, and even more so when he found himself in private with one of them. Cracking his neck, Naruto waited for Naomi to regain her lost composure. Naruto assumed that the way she was looking at him that she was expecting him to just up and vanish if she said even the slightest thing wrong, which had him smirking a bit. Using his palm to brush the bang hanging over his left eye out of the way, Naruto returned to staring at his sister, who was clearly happy but also antsy. However, I am not here to talk about a measure of time. Do you care to tell me why you are spying on me, Naomi? Naruto asked, and just like that the small flickers of warmth in his voice were replaced by iron, showing he was ready to make a judgment after she had explained herself. Naomi's violet eyes widened at the way that Naruto made it seem like she was doing something scandalous. Immediately she blushed and began to wave her hands in front of her frantically to try and stop Naruto from getting the idea she was some stalker like Hinata who wouldn't stop stalking her. It isn't like that, Ni-san. I wasn't spying or stalking you or anything like that, Databane. Naruto's lips curled into the faintest of smirks when he heard his sister's nervous stammering ending with a verbal tick. It was even funnier because Naomi too realized what she said, and the blush on her face got even darker than the color of her hair. Naomi couldn't believe that the one time she managed to talk to Naruto alone that she had totally made a fool of herself. Then, like a switch flipped, Naomi's demeanor got much quieter, almost meek. I was just watching you spar with that girl from Taki, and then you started to talk to Konohamaru, and then I got lost in my thoughts and I wanted to ask you to maybe help me with my wind training. Naomi asked weakly, looking at Naruto like she was afraid that he was going to hit or scold her. Naruto, who felt the unease coming from Naomi, hummed softly as he looked at his sister. That may be true, but there is something else in your eyes that you aren't sharing with me. I won't give you my answer until you tell me what else is on your mind. That is my decision, Naomi. Naruto insisted calmly, still sitting in the same position he had been for the last hour as he looked at her expectantly. Looking unsure, Naomi eventually crumbled and took a seat on her tree branch, looking right back at Naruto, struggling to put what she wanted to say in words with Naruto sitting there right before her eyes. It was like 1,000-pound weight had been set upon both of her shoulders. Her eyes slowly moved from Naruto's cool blue to the green grass covering the ground underneath the tree that they were sitting on. Swallowing down the lump of uncertainty that had settled down in her throat, Naomi began speaking in a whisper, a vulnerable one. It was just that when I saw you treating Konohamaru like a little brother, I couldn't help but let my mind wander. I still want that from my brother. Even if we are triplets, I want that big brother. Naruto could hear the bitterness in her tone but chose to let her vent it all out before he gave his own response to her. I realized that growing up none of us really did anything for you except make you feel alone and like that you weren't cared for. I really do. But things have changed. I have changed. Why can't you treat me like a sister instead of a distant acquaintance? Why can't you forgive me and show me the same affection that you do with someone who isn't even blood? Why? Naomi shouted at her brother, hot tears rolling down her cheeks, her chest heaving with distress. The stare that the redhead was leveling Naruto with made him sigh to himself as he gathered his thoughts. Things are never that easy, Naomi. There is no just black or just white, there are many different shades in this world. That past you so easily reference is something of a scar to me. It is a reminder of a time where I was dependent on others and because of that I was treated like a disease. That is the reason I can't forgive you, because it would be like forgetting what drove me, something I am not ready to do. Perhaps in time I will be, but not yet. Naruto spoke confidently but softly, and because his hubris wouldn't allow him to admit he wasn't quite strong enough yet to welcome such a touching subject back into his heart. Sniffling a bit, Naomi wiped away the fresh tears staining her cheeks, looking at Naruto in silence as she tried to understand his reasoning. He's right. Even though it is difficult for someone to change, it is even more difficult to forget, let alone forgive. I was acting like that selfish brat I was when we were younger. At least he is willing to try to forgive me in time, Naomi thought with a small amount of glee finding its way into her in the sign of a small smile. Now that you have told me what is on your mind, I do believe that I owe you some training. Naruto said with a small sigh as he popped his neck a few times before standing up on his feet, stretching out his back. Naomi let out a small cheer and attempted to jump to Naruto's branch to hug him. This was not meant to be because a light gust of wind suddenly blew, almost knocking Naomi off her branch. It would have worked too if Naomi had not clung to the surface of the wood using her chakra. There will be no hugging. You used up an excuse for that back when I was in the hospital after fighting Gaara. Ignoring the pout, Naruto vanished in a wind, Shunshin reappearing in the center of his training field with his arms crossed, with Naomi appearing a moment later in a smoke, Shunshin showing that Naruto was further ahead in the art than his sister. Seeing that his sister was taking this seriously, Naruto looked at her intently. Tell me what you have been told thus far about the element of wind. Naomi blinked once as she brought her finger up to her chin and repeatedly tapped her finger against it while her eyes moved to the sky, an action many performed when trying to recall something they were told earlier. Nodding with a smile, the red-headed Namikaze looked to her brother with a grin. Two-san told me that when using wind the goal is to hone it together, kind of like two blades grinding against each other until they are in unison. Then wind can be used to cut anything. Before he even knew it, Naruto found that he was scoffing at multiple things that Naomi had said. The first was that her father was the one who gave this information, and second, that information was severely limited to what was common knowledge. Naruto's scoff had Naomi narrow her eyes at him, wondering if he was doubting her skills, something she didn't like anyone doing, not even her wayward brother. Thank you for giving me the definition that any chunin with access to a library could have given. It doesn't surprise me that you aren't aware that wind can do such more. With that piece of information, all of the negative emotions the holder of the Kyuubi's yin chakra was feeling vanished under a wave of curiosity and excitement. Cocking her head to the side, Naomi looked at Naruto questioningly. There is more to wind than cutting things. I thought it was the cutting that made wind the most offensive element. The sun is often said to be what keeps us alive. Naruto began, suddenly leaving Naomi confused as to why he was talking about the giant ball of gas now of all times. But that is only half of the equation. Wind, or maybe I should say the oxygen in the wind, is just as important to our survival. If the sun is capable of keeping us safe and protecting us from death, why can't wind when they are identical pieces in the same puzzle? The raven-haired Uzumaki asked rhetorically as his blue eyes pandered over to the clouds floating overhead, a habit picked up thanks to Shikamaru. With the further explanation, everything fell into place for Naomi, like the puzzle Naruto was speaking about as a metaphor. Now fully intrigued and ready to work, Naomi leaned forward, bouncing on her heels and grinning like crazy. I get it now, Ni-san. How do I get the wind to protect me like you do when you use your Fujin no Yoroi? Thinking about how great it would be to use the jutsu of her brother's creation, Naomi grinned even wider. If you want to use my technique, then you must be willing to trust the wind to not cut and dismember your body. You can't try to force it to cut what you want, but you must let it act as it will. I want you to let your chakra saturate the air for the next few minutes. Normally this would only take a moment, but you are just starting off, so we will take our time with this step. Naruto spoke, activating his Sharingan so that he could tell his student when she had used enough chakra and could start the next step. The red-headed Jinchuriki nodded her head, not really sure about all of that wise stuff Naruto was going on about, but she trusted her brother enough that he would not let her chop herself into slices. Clasping her hands together like any non-Jinchuriki would do to break a genjutsu, she started to forcibly expel her chakra into the air around her. The black-haired clan leader watched on with a scrutinizing eye, waiting until the chakra she was producing saturated the air enough. It was the better part of a half an hour before Naruto signaled Naomi to cut off the chakra she was constantly producing. Letting her torso slump forward, Naomi started to pant from exhaustion as she estimated that she had just let go of about 60% of her chakra. The three tomo in his eyes made it easy for Naruto to pick up the massive quantity of chakra in the air. Okay, now that there is a sufficient amount of chakra in the air, I want you to try and begin to sense for your chakra mixed into the air and then call it back to your body. The daughter of the Hokage nodded slowly and closed her eyes and extended her senses, where she quite easily found her chakra. Happy by this success, she tried to pull on it, wanting to steam through this process in hopes of impressing her brother. After what felt like the 100th try, she opened her eyes, the frustration as clear as the twitch of her brow. Are you sure this is possible? It's like trying to pull something that can't be grasped, Databane. Naruto smirked softly at his annoyed sister because it brought back flashbacks of his own struggles with this part of the process, and it was rewarding to see someone else frustrated with his technique, a perk of being the creator, he supposed. This is something that not many people can do. You see, trying to control chakra that has already left your body is 100 times more difficult than controlling the chakra inside of you. Even sensors who are extremely aware of chakra around them cannot do this without a grand amount of effort. The amount of effort and chakra easily sways people and has them quitting. Are you going to quit, Naomi? The mention of quitting before the job was done immediately brought a determined fire into the eyes of Naomi. She knew she couldn't let her brother down, especially when he was willing to teach her his own jutsu. She shook her head furiously and started to try and pull her chakra back with a new sense of determination. Maybe we are alike, Naomi, Naruto thought as he sat down and unsealed a scroll from his wrist. Before Naruto even knew it, the moon and stars had taken place of the sun at what seemed to be like a flash, but in reality was the better part of 5 hours. Silently, Naruto cursed his laser-like focus for making him lose track of time. Looking down, Naruto could see a few seals he had been working on over this period of time and saw that none of them were quite complete yet. This whirlpool shadow style is so damn complicated even at the beginner stage. After rolling up his scroll of unfinished seal matrices, Naruto resealed the scroll itself and looked up to see Naomi grinning down at him. Standing up, Naruto was curious as to why she was looking like that. The silence became too much for Naomi to bear thanks to the great news she had. Look, Ni-san. I did it, Databane. She shouted happily as she showed Naruto her forearms, which were covered by a thick shroud of wind. However, she frowned after examining it further. Hey Ni-san, why doesn't my wind look like yours did? That is very impressive. When I started off, the wind would only cover my hands. Taking a step closer, Naruto ran a hand through his black locks, looking at the wind gathered around his sister's forearms. That is because there is a third step. I didn't mention this because I did it where the wind covered all of my body first, but since you already mastered the Rasengan, this step should be easy. Spin the wind. Looking into Naruto's eyes, which had faded back to their natural oceanic shade, Naomi nodded with a wide grin. As Naomi applied the same concept of rotation to the wind on her arms as she did during Rasengan training. Naomi's grin shifted into a bright smile that almost lit up the dark training field when she saw her wind become just like her brother's. I did it! She shouted, throwing her arms up while the technique faded due to her lack of concentration. Before Naruto could even react, there was a red blur, then a sudden weight impacting his chest. The shinobi didn't even need the red breaking the peripheral of his vision to figure out that Naomi had hugged him once again. Sighing, Naruto went to push his sister away but stopped when he heard a light snore escape from her mouth. The blue eyes of Naruto could be seen blinking in rapid succession in surprise. She fell asleep, Naruto said to himself, and instinctively Naomi squeezed Naruto a little tighter. A soft groan escaped Naruto's lips when he realized that meant he would have to bring her to the Namikaze estate, his least favorite place possibly on the earth. Why is it always me who has to put up with this? Must you mock me constantly, Kami? Naruto spoke out in what could be thought of as a whine. Even still, this complaint didn't stop Naruto from picking his sister up bridal style. Adjusting to the new position, Naomi nuzzled her head into his chest, making Naruto sigh before he vanished in a vortex of black wind. Appearing right outside of the Namikaze estate, the raven-haired shinobi walked down the same cobbled path he fled from not so long ago, all the while his sister was sleeping comfortably in his arms. Getting to the front door, Naruto assumed the seals let him thanks to the blood in his veins, otherwise this place needed a serious security upgrade. Naruto kicked the front door 3 times, recreating a knock since his hands were obviously quite full. Naruto could hear the sound of footsteps approaching the other side of the door and waited silently. What can I do for you? He heard the sound of Kushina's voice before she had even opened the door all the way. Not answering, Naruto began an internal countdown until she realized who he was carrying, and then on cue. Naomi-chan. She shouted quite loudly, that quickly brought about Minato appearing behind her shoulder. She is fine. She exhausted herself training. Naruto's firm voice caught both parents' attention and stopped them from losing it. Minato and Kushina looked up and both relaxed, seeing that it was Naruto carrying their daughter. It took them a moment to realize that it was Naruto, and his appearance itself brought up some questions. She was training with you. What were you guys training in? Kushina asked, hoping to get some information on her son. She was smiling, seeing that her children were getting along, even if Naruto could care less what happened to she and Minato. At least her babies were civil, and it appeared Naruto was kind enough to bring his sister home. I would prefer to keep that between Naomi and myself, Kushina. This had the red-haired mother sigh sadly but nod nonetheless. She knew it was better to respect his wishes than try to force him into something. And it must have been working since he started to use her name. Yeah, she would take what she could get. Minato took this chance to get into the conversation between his son and wife with a small smile. Naruto, do you think you can take Naomi-chan to her bedroom? Kushina-chan and I are going over some important paperwork at the moment. Minato asked while sighing internally. He knew from Narumi that Naomi had gone off to do something, but he was still relieved to see his daughter back home, sleeping or not. Thinking it over for a moment, Naruto reluctantly nodded and stepped through the threshold of the house once the 2 guardians of the estate made room for him to do so. Not looking back, Naruto made his way up the stairs to where he assumed Naomi's room would still be. Nudging the semi-open door with his foot, Naruto made his way into the room that was only illuminated by the moon's light. The raven-haired boy used his wind manipulation to unfold Naomi's blanket. Walking towards the bed, Naruto slowly lowered her in and then gently tucked her in the bed, and just as he was about to step away, he heard her mumble something. Thank you, Ni-san. Naruto's body froze, because with the amount of affection in her voice she may as well have called him Naruto-kun instead. Turning slowly, Naruto looked down at the peacefully sleeping girl with a conflicted expression in play. What should he do in a situation like this? He cursed Itachi and Mihawk for never teaching him how to react to something like this. You are welcome, Naomi. Naruto whispered in response, bringing a content smile to his sleeping sibling's face, as if she somehow consciously recognized his voice despite being completely asleep. Naruto stood there because for just a split second he almost instinctively called her little sister, Imoto. With all of these confusing emotions swirling around him, the raven-haired swordsman quickly left the room and started to walk down the hallway, planning to leave. Then he came to the door of his old room and stopped, staring at it as memories from the past came flowing back to him, memories of his crying as he tried to recover from a beating that had happened on any given night. Without even thinking, Naruto walked forward and opened his door to find his old room was still decorated in the Spartan style, empty. His eyes did linger on a large pile of notes sitting on his old desk. Curious as to what they had said, Naruto pulled out the chair and began to read each one of them. As Naruto read each note, he found that a smile was put on his face, and then it grew as he read more. Each of the notes was from one of his sisters, each note an admission to how guilty and sorry they felt and how much they wanted him to come back. And the shocking thing was that there were hundreds of them from each of them. Then Naruto realized something that made him snarl. There were no notes from either of his parents, this fact only reminding him why he hated the two. This is why we will never be the family they desire, because it is all lip service. They don't show any sign of true regret. They are just the same as they were when I was a child. Minato and Kushina. Minato, who with the rest of the council had just sat through another extremely drawn-out monthly rundown from the civilians on how they thought the civilian aspects of Konoha could be improved, which was mostly just them trying to deepen their pockets. On the rare occasion there was a genuinely good idea, but not with this batch of self-serving civilians. Seeing a chance to rid the council chambers of the civilians, the Hokage cleared his throat, gaining the attention of most of the council. Thank you for that most enlightening presentation on how we may act to help Konoha, but now that you have said your piece, I am afraid I must ask you to leave so that we may discuss shinobi business. The Yellow Flash asked in the most polite tone that he could muster, getting a clear nod from Kushina, who sat behind him because of Naruto occupying the Uzumaki seat of the council. All of the civilians muttered their discontent, but in the end they all left the room without incident. Is it just me, or does it seem like those civilians are getting more annoying and taking up more time with each meeting? Was the question posed by the Inuzuka clan head, Sume, as she tried to shake away the sleepiness that had fallen over her during the time taken up by the long-winded civilians. Don't you think you are being a little harsh on them, Sume? I mean, they are just trying to better the village, kind of. Asuma said, trying to come to their defense. The younger Sarutobi was now the acting Sarutobi clan head because of the third stepping down in an effort to remove himself from the public eye and fall into a quiet retirement after so many decades in active service. Kushina, who agreed with her friend Sume, shook her head with a small smirk, since it was clear who the newbie was in the council room, and Asuma was displaying all the signs of that. You can only say that because this is the second meeting you have attended. Give it time and your nerves will wither too, Asuma. Minato, who wanted to move on with the meeting's agenda, sent Kushina a look telling her to quiet down, earning a pout from his wife. Civilians aside, I received a report from Jiraiya that Suna has shown no sign of acting out of what has become standard since before we took the Fuma mission. This piece of information leads me to believe that it was not Suna who leaked the information of our operation to the Fuma. Minato said happily as his eyes surveyed the room for reactions, only spending a moment longer on Danzo than others. Well, that is good news. It would be pretty bad if we lost our ties with Suna, especially considering tensions with the Sentaki are high right now thanks to the incident with the Nanabi Jinchuriki. Inoichi spoke up with a small frown as he looked to Naruto, who was at the other side of the table. If Naruto saw his gaze, he didn't acknowledge it, sitting there with his eyes closed but making it clear that he was awake. My thoughts exactly, Inoichi. It is good that we can manage to hold on to an ally in such uncertain times. Now then, on to the next piece of information. It seems that Kumo has come to us with a request. A frown made its way on his face as Minato thought about the shaky history between the village hidden in the clouds and the village hidden in the leaves. Just like that, everyone was alert, even Danzo, whose lone eye narrowed. What is it that they are asking of us, Hokage-sama? Shibi asked from his seat, acting in favor of the Aburame. The only real sign of interest coming from the controlled man was the slight lean forward he was unconsciously doing. There were a couple nods around the table, making it clear that others were wondering the same thing. They have asked for an alliance between our two villages. Minato said calmly as he watched a certain level of surprise or shock play out on most of the counselors' faces. He too was blown away by the offer from the very militaristic village from the Kaminari no Kuni because it seemed so out of character. Everyone knew that Kumo was the kind of village that would have rather walked over your body than helped you out, so naturally there were some suspicions. Homura looked to his cage from behind his pair of glasses and frowned, which only served to accentuate the frowns that were etched into his forehead from years of service and stress. Folding his arms over his chest, giving the impression he was not very pleased, even if he had no right to judge a cage as a counselor. Why are we only finding out about this right now of all times, Hokage-sama? Sighing, The blonde once again questioned himself as to why he let the advisors from the last regime remain in their seats of influence. The reason for that advisor was because I only received the scroll with the details on this proposition 10 minutes before this meeting was scheduled to begin. Minato said, sending a small glare towards the elderly man, making him lose some of that false confidence he had built up and shrink back with a nod. It's not like it matters what the scroll says. Knowing Kumo, it is probably just a cover for some attempt to kidnap one of our shinobi like in the past. The red-haired wife of the Hokage spoke venomously, remembering the time Kumo had tried to kidnap her. This sentiment was shared by Hiashi because the last time it was his daughter they had tried to kidnap for her Byakugan, and that cost him his twin brother. How exactly do they want to confirm this treaty? I assume that it is a complete treaty requiring both trading and military assistance should conflict arise, considering the times we live in. Shikaku asked his question before correctly assessing what kind of treaty was offered based off of rational thought and speculation, getting Minato to send him an impressed smirk because his brain power never ceased to amaze the young Hokage. That is the part that has me concerned. Kumo is asking for an engagement to make sure that we don't go back on the agreement if something should happen. Minato found himself to be frowning once again as he laced his fingers in front of his face. Hearing that brought frowns to most of the council, as well as they thought about different things from possible candidates to backlash should they reject it. There is more. They have requested a certain person for the bride they have offered. They want you, Naruto. Minato finished leaving the room so silent a pin could be heard if it was dropped. Then, just like a broken floodgate, a number of side conversations begin between individual counselors that filled the room. Minato ignored all of this in favor at looking to Naruto, who showed no visible reaction and in fact was sitting back in his chair as stoic as ever, or maybe even more detached. It was Makoto who was the first person to speak to the entirety of the chamber. This must be another one of Kumo's ploys to take one of our dojutsu for their own. We all know how desperate they are to supplement their forces with the bloodlines of other countries. It has to be a trap to get Naruto-kun's Sharingan. Makoto tried to reason, wanting to protect the boy she saw as her own son from the dastardly clutches of another country's thirst for power. She would not let him turn out like her friend Hazashi, who was a scapegoat to Kumo's ambition. Normally I would agree with you, Makoto, but it is who they propose to be his wife that has me thinking that this might be a genuine. The person named to be wed with Naruto is the Samui girl that took part in the Chunin exams. She herself is in possession of the bloodline limit known as the Storm Release, one of only 2 people who possess it in Kumo. Minato said, catching the attention of Danzo, since that was quite the rare bloodline, and while not as powerful as the Sharingan, it was something worth noting. I can understand why they would like to have your son as their choice, but surely they could accept Sasuke. He too has the Sharingan. Kaharu said with a scowl on her face, since she still didn't like the Uzumaki clan head. He was just too disrespectful for her liking and needed to be more compliant. No, Kumo has made it plenty clear that they will only accept Naruto as a potential groom. It seems that his performance against the Kage's son and his Biju had left an impression with the Raikage and his council. Minato explained Kumo's rationale, looking at the elderly woman, then back to his son, who had yet to say anything, which had him start to worry. Even if the Storm Release is obscure and powerful, it still isn't in a league with the Sharingan. I say that we reject the offer. Kushina said stubbornly, as she acted like the mother she was to Naruto, but if you were going to ask Naruto, he would say she was acting out of place and was by no means his mother. Kushina not only is Naruto a Chunin of this village, he is also the Uzumaki clan head and has to make his own decisions. The disapproval of her husband did nothing to deter the scoff she verbalized, since she still wanted nothing to do with whatever Kumo had planned for her son. It just struck too close to home for the female Uzumaki. Shaking his head slightly, Minato turned back to his son. What do you have to say, Naruto? That was when every set of eyes in the room made their way to Naruto's seat, where he was still sitting motionless with his eyes closed. If Naruto felt any unease with all of those eyes on him, he did well to hide it under a blank facade. He did try his best to not show how much he disliked the idea, but he remembered something that Hiruzen had told him once when the two were having tea at his home. Listen here, Naruto-kun, because I have some advice for you should you ever become Hokage. A Hokage sometimes must do something that he'd rather not, so he can keep the village and its future safe from those who would do it harm. Accepting this will bring us a new ally in Kumo, and this will leave us a safety net should things fall through with Suna. If I accept this, then I can ensure that the village will be even safer than it would if I am to say no. If a token marriage is what it takes to keep the future of Konoha safe from jealous adversaries of the past, then that is a price I am willing to pay. With that in mind, you can inform the Raikage that I will accept this offer. To punctuate his statement, Naruto opened his eyes, showing off his fully matured Sharingan. As much as he tries to not show it, he really doesn't want to do it, but he will, because it means that Konoha will be better off should the worst happen. The kid is something else, Asuma thought with a smile around his unlit cigarette and a newfound respect for Naruto, as he was reminded of the same statement that Naruto was when he looked at the young Chunin. Naruto, you don't have to do this. There has to be another way to get this treaty signed. Makoto said heatedly from her seat next to Naruto, not being able to comprehend how he could just sell his happiness like that for a village he hated. She just didn't know that Naruto was doing this for the future of the village, the kids. No, Makoto, I need to do this. It is the only way that we can for sure maintain at least one ally in case Suna proves to be a traitor. It is my duty as a shinobi of this village. Naruto tried to assure his pseudo-mother with a serene smile that had her frowning sadly while cursing his noble nature that she was sure came from his Uzumaki genetics. When am I expected to be married to Samui? Naruto asked, wanting to gauge how much time he had left to himself before things changed. Minato smiled at his son, proud that he would do something so selfless for a village that had been less than kind to him and not even 4 months ago had a stadium full of people calling for his execution on the Chunin exams field. That is where I have some good news. It seems that the Raikage wants to wait for about 3.5 years because you are only 13 and Samui 14. He thinks that you both need time to grow as people, so until then you are to be engaged. Naruto sighed and nodded. That was indeed a silver lining, if you will, in this whole political mess that he was pushed into. With that, Minato called an end to the meeting, but Naruto immediately left to go think on his new fiancée. This left those who wanted to talk to him about what just happened frowning in disappointment. I'm what? Samui shouted in shock, which was completely unexpected to anyone who had even heard about the girl in her Ice Queen persona. The busty blonde was just informed that she was to be married off to a shinobi of another village, and she reacted like any woman with a mind would have. She got angry. I did not appear to be bothered by the outburst, though he was slightly surprised to see the usually controlled Kunoichi react so aggressively. Staring at her blankly, I tried to scare her back to a more talkable state, but Samui was so flustered that she was not paying attention. Growing irritated easily, it could easily be stated that the fourth lightning shadow was not the most patient person to live. Enough, Chunin. I barked out, his hand slamming down on his desk, knocking over a stack of papers that his assistant had brought in a while ago. Samui, who suddenly became more aware of who she was in the presence of, straightened out and controlled herself from lashing out anymore. As I was saying, you have been engaged to a shinobi from the Hidden Leaf until you will be married in 3 years' time, give or take a few months. I said with his usual serious expression on his face, ignoring the look of confusion on his subordinate's face. He only called her here to let her know what was going to happen to her so she wouldn't be completely blindsided. May I ask who it is and why, Raikage-sama? Samui asked, in hopes of trying to figure out what was going on, while she silently hoped that she was not engaged to Sasuke Uchiha, who she had found out during the exams that he was just a cocky fool who had both an inferiority and superiority complex. That would be like hell on earth for the storm release user. Opening up his desk, the hulking Raikage sent a small folder towards Samui with a grunt which she caught easily. Yes, the boy's name is Naruto Uzumaki or Uchiha. I don't really care what he calls himself. I said rather dismissively as Samui opened up the folder and read the information that was gathered on her fiancé. As for why, just know that everything starts with the first step, and it is your duty as a kunoichi of Kumogakur. You will not fail. Do you understand? Nodding absently, Samui stepped out of her cage's office, and once the door closed, she slumped against the wall and let out a tired sigh that quickly escaped from her lips. The blonde kunoichi looked down at Naruto's picture with her usual stoicism. At least Naruto-san is someone who has shown he doesn't lord his strength over others, and he seems cool enough. And most important, he will respect my strength. It could be worst. With that, Samui left to her home carrying the folder with the information on her fiancé. Somewhere in Hai no Kuni, Kakashi and his team continued their slow trek through the woods of the Land of Fire, each lost in their own thoughts. Except for the silver-haired Junin, he was reading his favorite Ika novel written by a certain white-hair pervert that all women loathed. Kakashi was glad to not have to hear any arguments between his three subordinates. It was no secret that Sakura still had major crush on the team's Uchiha, but at least she had grown at a kunoichi thanks to Tsunade's strict tutelage. Sasuke was still grasping onto those inferiority and superiority complexes of his that had only grown since the beatdown that Naruto laid on him, where he systematically destroyed Sasuke in all he claimed to be best at. Sasuke still felt the need and right to badmouth Naruto about how he was simply lucky and that he would give the villagers what they wanted, and that was Naruto's execution. This had earned him disturbed looks from both Sakura and Kakashi and a furious scowl from Naomi. It was just not possible for the single-handed mauling Naruto laid upon him, just like when Itachi left on that night. It was a reminder of his weakness, and that was something he never wanted to relive. Just thinking about it left the raven-haired shinobi clutching at his fists in a way to force out those dark thoughts. Maybe if he was stronger he could have stopped Itachi that night and the Uchiha would finally get the respect they deserved. Not once had an Uchiha been put for the seat of Hokage. As a matter of fact, they were shunned from it. If the clan was alive, he was certain they could rule the village. Then they could kill that false Uchiha, Naruto, and he could laugh at the boy's grave, but no, none of that would happen, all because of his traitorous elder brother. Sasuke's eyes went red with his Sharingan at the thoughts of hatred flowing through his veins. If I want to be able to kill Itachi, then first I need to kill Naruto and rip his false eyes right out of his head. Sasuke mumbled, smirking a bit as he imagined the look of shock on Naruto's face when he finally would manage to end his desperate existence. Letting out the very Uchiha patented HN snort as he continued to walk forward. Only someone had overheard what the revenge-driven boy said. You better watch your tongue, Uchiha. Ni-san already kicked your ass once and he can and would do it 100 more times. Naomi said confidentially, wearing a challenging smirk of her own. Ever since she and Naruto had trained, she had felt closer to her brother than ever before, and that meant she felt the need to defend his name. She knew Naruto could handle himself, but he wasn't here, so she felt that the privilege fell to her to put the Uchiha in his place. Sasuke rounded on the red-headed daughter of the Hokage with his Sharingan already glaring bloody murder at the smirking kunoichi. His lips turned down into an angry snarl at the mention of the teen we was going to kill, that he promised to himself. Don't you dare say the name of that worthless fake of an Uchiha. Sasuke said, losing his temper so quickly thanks to the thoughts bubbling under the surface. She had him hooked at. Naomi knew it, and she never thought it would feel so satisfying to be able to push someone like this. Sure, she had seen Naruto do it, but it was another thing entirely to be the one manipulating someone. Placing her hands on her hips, Naomi decided to see how far she could humiliate the emotionally unstable shinobi. Oh, and if Ni-san is a fake Uchiha, what does that make you, seeing as how he smacked you around in front of the world? Naomi asked with a cheeky smirk, making Sasuke once again go back to his first and only fight of the Chunin exams. I told you to shut your mouth. If you don't shut up, I am going to kill you before I kill the Hokage's bastard son. Sasuke growled, his Sharingan spinning dangerously at Naomi, whose hair shadowed her eyes. Unseen to anyone, Sasuke's curse mark pulsed a light purple, feeding his negative emotions before fading back to its normal black color. Sasuke-kun, what are you saying? The pink-haired kunoichi of the team asked in a sad whisper that went unheard by the Uchiha Avenger. Sakura knew Sasuke wasn't the nicest or most sensitive of guys, but he would never outright promise to kill someone unless it was his older brother. This just wasn't like him to voice his dark thoughts, and it scared the daughter of two civilians. Naomi stood there silently with her hair covering her eyes, making Sasuke think that she was going to back down. That was until she looked up. In an instant her violet eyes went to the violent crimson of the Kyuubi, and her hair started to separate into 9 tendrils that started to sway ominously. Sasuke subconsciously took a step away from what seemed to be the Kyuubi in a young woman's form. You can say all you want about me and the others in my family, Uchiha. You can even threaten my life. I can handle that, but when you threaten and completely insult my brother is when I can't take any more. By the end of her threat, Naomi's voice was no longer her own, but it was laced with the venom and anger that distorted it to sound like a young demon's. The amount of killing intent she was releasing was enough to get Sasuke's knees to wobble and Sakura to fall to the ground unconscious. Even Kakashi had a bead of sweat coming down his forehead as the intent to kill Sasuke got even thicker. The silver-haired Cyclops knew that he had to intervene before Naomi lost control and accidentally killed Sasuke. What Kakashi didn't know was that if he died it would be an accident. Appearing between the two, Kakashi turned to face Sasuke so he didn't put his own feet in the grave that he was digging. Kakashi put his hands on Sasuke's shoulders, getting the boy to lock gazes with him. Sasuke take Sakura and continue on this path. Even though Kakashi spoke softly, it was still clearly in order. Sasuke looked to the Junin for a moment before grunting and rudely breaking Kakashi's contact. Stomping over to Sakura, he slung her over his shoulder and marched off down the path. Sighing in relief, Kakashi turned around to face Naomi, whose hair returned back to normal but her eyes were still that dangerous glint of red. The silver-haired former Anbu approached the angry Chunin Jinchuriki with caution in case she called upon that chakra. Naomi, you need to calm down before you lose control, Kakashi said urgently, hoping to stop his sensei's daughter from doing something she would regret and get him thrown out active duty for the foreseeable future. Red eyes flickered up to meet the single, weary eye of the scarecrow, where they stared up defiantly for a few moments before Naomi nodded. Looking at her sensei, Naomi nodded with a small smile that shifted back to a frown as she watched Sasuke walk away. If the Uchiha runs his mouth like that again, sensei, I will pound him into the ground for my Nisan. With her proclamation said, Naomi marched past Kakashi reluctantly to follow after her team to complete the mission, leaving Kakashi frowning. I just hope this team can get through this mission without the two coming to blows. Once again, Kakashi used a shunshin to appear in front of his young team of Konoha shinobi who he had ordered to wait for him to return. He was pleased to find that they weren't fighting each other but rather divided, he could say. Sakura, who was sitting near Sasuke, was trying to hide the small glances she was taking at her two teammates. Sasuke was sitting there, his eyes closed and looking generally annoyed with everything. Then there was Naomi, who must have noticed his presence because she was looking at him expectantly. Just like her mother, patience was not a virtue she possessed. I went ahead and did some scouting on the camp that our target has went ahead and set up, and there won't be all that difficult. There was a B rank missing nin and a rather small group of bandits that you will deal with. Time to head out. Let's go, Kakashi said, pulling out his famous orange novel to pass the time as they started to walk. It wasn't a long walk. It was only a few minutes before they reached the gates of the small outpost. It was clear that the walls weren't there because of arrogance or anything in that vein, but rather necessity. The walls showed claw marks from some sort of wildlife that had apparently taken interest in what the people in the area were doing and wanted to investigate. That was the purpose of the walls, safety, not making a statement but a difference. Seeing the familiar defensive structure, Kakashi put away his book and motioned for the two genin and chunin to stop with his gloved hand. Once the silver-haired shinobi heard the small sounds that came with his team's footsteps coming to an end, he turned around to give out his orders. Okay, now that we are here, I want you three to listen and carefully. I have already concluded that there is only one shinobi in the camp and I will be dealing with the nuke nin. Every other person in the camp is a bandit, so I will leave the decision whether you leave them unconscious or dead up to you. Sasuke, I want you to take the left side of the outpost and Naomi the right. Kakashi said, getting two quick nods although Sasuke was smirking. Focusing his one eye on Sakura, who he had yet to address, which made her both curious and a little upset that he hadn't asked her to help. She had trained much harder than ever before in her life, so she wouldn't be so useless. Sakura, you are the team's only medic, so it is vital you don't get injured. I want you to stay posted here and watch in case more enemies show up, and this way you can alert the rest of us. Kakashi said with an eye smile, serving to boost the young kunoichi's confidence, something he would try to do as often as he could. Now that all three of you know what you have to do, go and do it, Kakashi said before walking towards the center of the camp, allowing the two combatants of his team to vanish in their own variants of the body flicker technique. The famed copy nin calmly made his way towards the larger tent set up in the very center of the area as the panicked screams made their way through the camp, no doubt thanks to his two students. I don't think I should waste time here with Sasuke and Naomi at odds like they are. Pulling down the face mask that he used to conceal his own Sharingan eye, Kakashi quickly flashed a few signs ending on that of the tiger. Fire release. Grand fireball. Through the fabric of his face mask came a brilliant ball of super hot flames that soared through the air towards the tent. The silver-haired Junin's nose twitched slightly when the scent of burning fabric invaded his senses. A sigh made its way from Kakashi's lips as he turned around slowly to find a man with sandy brown hair facing him, the man's eyes set in a superior stare. What is it, Sharingan no Kakashi? Did you think that you had burned me alive? The man was seen to be wearing a scratched-out Iwa headband. He asked his question feeling smug since he would have the chance to defeat the fabled Konoha Junin. It would be a huge reputation boost for him and his little following. No, it isn't anything like that at all. I knew you survived, but I was hoping that you had enough common courtesy to die in a blaze of glory, if you will. Kakashi said, looking at the man lazily as the Iwagakure missing nin smirked even wider, taking the Cyclops nin's words different from what they were meant to be taken as. As if the unnamed shinobi was privileged to a joke no one else was, he began to laugh boisterously, even going so far as to shake his head. Taking a few deep breaths, the former Iwa shinobi turned back to Kakashi. Of course it would take more than a little fire to kill me, Kakashi. I was about to become a Junin myself before I left that moronic village. But it's funny that you should mention glory, because it will be all mine when I get the head from your shoulders. You want to hear something funny? Some no-name Chunin thinks that he can take my head in a one-on-one fight. Doesn't that just make you want to chuckle? Kakashi asked sarcastically, but all he got was a boulder flying towards him. Looks like he doesn't want to trade words anymore. Kakashi easily weaved out of the boulder's flight pattern, pulling a kunai out of the holster on his hip. Appearing behind his opponent, Kakashi drove the blade of his kunai through the back of the Iwa Nuke Nin's neck. The man's body crumbled into a liquid mess of mud, showing it was only a Tsuchi Bunshin. You think that just because your name has some weight behind it that you are invincible? I don't know about Konoha, but where I come from that is called arrogance, Kakashi. The man spoke as his body came out of the ground without a scratch on his body, but there still was a superior smirk. Naomi stood her ground silently, counting the number of thugs that had taken the space opposite of her. Bringing her hand down, Naomi counted 15 simple thugs. Only 10 or so were armed with a weapon. In short, she knew they were no match for a Chunin like her, much less a Jinchuriki. The redhead couldn't help but be disappointed that her sensei took the only shinobi in the group, but orders were orders. Man, I can't wait till I get to lead a team, then I will be able to stick others with nuisances like bandits. Damn you, sensei. Of course, the bandits, who were lulled to be more confident than they should be because of their numbers, mistook Naomi's stark disinterest for fear fitting the young girl she was. The man standing at the front of the group smirked, showing a few missing teeth. The rest of the men started to laugh, believing Naomi to be just another little girl pretending to be a ninja. Haha, looks like they sent a little girl to deal with us boys, oh what a riot. The man said, grinning once he heard the group behind laugh even harder, boosting his ego. Naomi watched on, clearly unimpressed, as all of their laughter melded together into one ugly, unpleasant sound that hurt the annoyed, young Kunoichi's ears. As they continued to laugh, Naomi grew certain they just liked hearing the sounds of their own voices. That guy calling them boys certainly fits how they act. All he did was call me a girl and they act like they were hit with some kind of laughing gas. Strangely enough, Naomi was aware that when she thought of a man and what she thought they should be, it wasn't her father that came to mind but her brother. You know, in a few years you would have been quite the looker, girly. I would have loved to have some fun with you, but I am not into children, so that means you're dead. Ha ha. The man's eyes flashed for a moment with lust, no doubt imagining an older, more matured Naomi for his lecherous thoughts. Then, just like a pack of hyenas, his laughter became infectious and the rest of the brigade of bandits started to laugh again until their lungs started to burn with the need for oxygen. It was clear they still thought of the Jinchuriki as nothing more than a girl playing shinobi. Naomi felt an extremely disgusted shiver enter her body when she saw the look in the eyes of the man who was the brash speaker of the group. It was extremely discomforting to know that a person of his character was thinking about her like that, but thankfully she had the abilities to make sure they wouldn't be thinking that for much longer. Raising her hands to face the laughing mass of stupidity, Naomi began to call on her chakra. Wind release. Dancing blades. Forming under her palms were two visible crescent blades of wind that had another pair of blades lined up behind them. With a slight outward pulse of her chakra, the 4 blades went slashing through the air, slamming into the chests of 4 unsuspecting thugs. The sharpened wind leaving deep enough gashes that they started to bleed before they went colliding with the tents that were set up. The 15 thugs were now 11 and suddenly had nothing else to laugh at. The sound of their stunned silence brought a content smirk to the face of the Namikaze heiress. The smirk only felt 100 times better because they thought she was some weak girl who they could slaughter and be done with. Oh, how wrong they were. What, she got 4 of them with one ninja technique thingy? She's like the boss. What do we do? There were a number consenting murmurs from the back of the group as those in the rear were able to look back to see that their allies still had yet to recover from that last ninjutsu attack. They may have felt confident before, but reality just slapped them in the face and hard, letting them know just what they were up against. The man at the head of the small group could feel that control of the group was slowly slipping through his fingers, and he knew he needed to do something. This little brat is nothing like the boss, just look at her. She is just a weak girl who got lucky with that strike. Now let's kill her. Let it be known that charisma was something anyone could have as long as they knew their audience, something this man had a firm grasp of. The redhead watched on, surprised, as the men suddenly found a grasp on their will to fight and grabbed their weapons, charging at her position. To a civilian or another common bandit the sight would have been intimidating, but to a shinobi it was just fools rushing to be defeated. Each of the men raised their weapons, some were sharp blades while others were meant to deal blunt force trauma. Of course Naomi had no intention to let this happen, responded by performing her hand signs that would scatter them like leaves in the wind. Naomi smirked when the combined war cry of the thugs was unleashed, because soon it would be a cry of shock. Wind release. Great breakthrough. With her fierce cry came a wall of wind that rushed past her shoulder towards the rushing bandits, which would set up a very painful collision between wind and flesh and bone. The men cried out in shock when the strong gale slammed into them, knocking them into the air and disarming them at the same time. The wind continued on, throwing the men through tents and into the wooden walls built all around the encampment. The sound of dull thuds was like music to the ears of the container of the Kyuubi's Yin Chakra, who was more than happy to deal some retribution out to the pigs of men these bandits were. A mangled groan of pain caught Naomi's attention, which allowed her to find the spokesperson of the group laying on his back, his arms struggling to support his limp frame. A small smirk crossed her lips as a glowing ball of spiraling chakra began to form in her open hand. Appearing above the man holding one of her father's signature jutsu, Naomi thrust her hand down into his gut. Rasengan. The man's beady eyes widened in pain as Naomi continued to drive the Rasengan deeper into his gut, increasing the pain exponentially. Luckily for the bandit, Naomi stopped before the attack could kill the man and created 15 shadow clones that all looked at her with the same satisfied smirk she was wearing. Dig holes into the ground and put them in them so that only their heads are sticking out of the ground. This way it is up to chance if they live or not. Naomi said with a grin. Sasuke delivered a quick kick to the back of the last thug's head, knocking him completely out, just like the other garbage he had disposed of in the area. All in all, the Uchiha was left with an unsatisfied feeling in his gut, much like Naomi. He wanted to get stronger, and it was clear to his eyes that these fools were not going to make him stronger. This is completely ridiculous. Why am I wasting my time dealing with idiots who can't even hold a weapon correctly when I could be training to kill those two? Sasuke growled in the recesses of his mind as images of Itachi and to a lesser extent Naruto came to the forefront of his mind. He was about to act on that rage by sending a fireball the way of the unconscious bandits, but a set of purposefully loud footsteps brought his attention to the body of another man who just had a different aura about him. It was clear that he was not another simple bandit, which made Sasuke grin. Oh, I remember those eyes. The eyes of the cursed clan of our home, but you're still just a kid, so I probably shouldn't get my hopes up. The man said, running his hand through his spiky black locks. His eyes were the same shade of black, and Sasuke could see the scratched out hidden leaf headband around his left bicep with a leaf flak covering his upper body. Sasuke also took note of the red and black bow staff that was fastened to his back running vertically. Sasuke's cursed eyes gleamed dangerously before the three, black tomo in each of his eyes rotated at the prospect of battling with another shinobi. It was even better knowing this was a shinobi from his village that couldn't cut it. He was about to learn of the power of the Uchiha. You are from Konoha. Then you should know how feared that the Uchiha clan is and about our power. I will enjoy killing you like the village should have done before you could run like a dog with its tail between its legs, fitting for a worthless shinobi like yourself. Fire release. Grand Fireball. The former Konoha shinobi watched as the fireball got closer with each second, but not before he used his own jutsu in accordance to the Uchiha's strike. Water release. Spiraling water bullet. From the man's mouth came a spherical mass of water where it was clearly visible that a small riptide was being built underneath. A mass of water meeting the ball of burning fire, creating the predictable blanket of mist that showered the space. It wasn't very long before a strong wind cleared away the mist, showing that neither shinobi was scathed. Ah, the fire you produce reminds me of those who were just as famous for their prowess with fire. It reminds me of those who took everything from me. You will be the unlucky one who will have to deal with the anger of my revenge. The man said, baring his teeth as he grabbed his staff and twirled it around skillfully. Sasuke, who was familiar with the desire for revenge, could hear the disdain in his opponent's voice and snarled. There was no way he would die to a no-name shinobi who couldn't cut it as a Konoha shinobi. Sasuke, who wasn't going to sit there and become someone's kill, dropped into his taijutsu stance, the interceptor fist. I don't know what you are talking about, but you are delusional if you think you can kill an Uchiha. I suppose I can tell you my story before you die. My name is Orion Sarutobi. You see, when the third Hokage tried to become the clan head, my father opposed him, believing his ideals would put our clan beneath those like the Uchiha and Hyuga. My father, however, did not have the kind of political backing that Hiruzen did, and ultimately he lost, but it doesn't end there. No, Hiruzen thought that my father's presence would only hinder relationship growth between the clans, so he sent him on a suicidal mission with his power as the Hokage. My father was too proud of a man to decline such a mission and believe himself to live as a coward. Orion started capturing Sasuke's attention, never knowing this side of the welcoming old man he had met a number of times. Now we fast forward a number of years to where I started to gain momentum in the village, but there was a caveat. Everyone in the clan ostracized me for being my father's son and often tried to incriminate me, and eventually they found what they needed. They realized that I couldn't perform a fire jutsu, something the Sarutobi clan prides itself on being able to do, and soon they started to form a plan to humiliate me and convince the clan head, Hiruzen, that I needed to be kicked from the clan. Knowing this, I decided to strike first. Orion's lips twisted into a dark, pleased grin that had latently resounded with Sasuke's curse mark, making it glow lightly. As you may or may not know, the old Sarutobi fathered two sons. Asuma became a ninja guardian, but have you ever heard of his first son? Orion slammed the butt of his staff into the ground and Sasuke shook his head no. There is a reason for that, of course. You see, we both went to the Junin exams on the same year. We both performed exceptionally, that I will admit, but the judges saw it differently. Even though we performed on equal footing, he was chosen and I was not, clearly a political move. I was furious, so I thought of not only my revenge but my father's as well. Sasuke felt himself getting pulled more into this unknown story like it was an elaborate, intricate genjutsu. It was not even 2 nights later that I found the chance to get my revenge on Hiruzen's immediate family. I was on my way home from guard duty when I heard a familiar voice coming from one of the local bars. It was Hiruzen's eldest son, and he was drunk celebrating his promotion. Seizing my chance, I offered to help him home, which he accepted, thinking we were friends. I had him and I knew it, so I took him to a dark alley which confused him even in a drunken state. Before he could even ask his question, my kunai found its way through his throat, completely leaving a hole where an Adam's apple should be. He was dead, and I took away from Hiruzen just like he had taken from me. The man started to laugh manically, which made Sasuke nervous because this Orion was clearly insane, and not even Sasuke was that far gone, curse mark and all. You are insane. I don't care that your family is weak, besides they will always be weak when compared to the power of the Uchiha. Sasuke shouted as he rushed in towards Orion, his Sharingan ready to read any body movement. Seeing that he wasn't moving, Sasuke decided to strike with his fist, but in a blur Orion blocked the straight right with the sturdy shaft of his bow staff, making the raven-haired genin flinch in pain. Not ready to be stopped by a simple stick, as Sasuke saw it, he got ready to twist his body to deal another blow, but Orion was faster again. Swirling his staff, Orion drove his sturdy wood deeply into the stomach of the younger shinobi, knocking the spit out of his mouth. Using his superior strength, Orion lifted Sasuke with the length of his weapon before slamming the teen back into the ground, knocking the breath out of Sasuke. Taking joy in Sasuke's groans and panting, Orion started to walk towards where the young genin was put in a small crater. It was then that his progress was stopped by a hail of kunai that had explosive tags that started to sizzle, which Orion immediately noticed and heard. Clever little brat. Boom. Sasuke propped himself up with his arms looking at the cloud of smoke with a smirk, not thinking that Orion would be capable of defending himself before the notes went off. Eventually the smoke drifted off, showing the only thing there looked like the remnants of an earth wall. Sasuke, learning from past battles, scanned the area around him for his adversary. Turning at the last moment, he acted quickly, deflecting the shuriken tossed at him with his kunai. Stubborn rodent should have just stayed dead. That was a nice trick you played there. Some of those tags were just pieces of paper and made me think that they were all live notes. Not bad. Not bad at all. Orion complimented the young Uchiha, patting down the spots on his sleeves that had deep scorch marks and soot on the fabric. A slight growl made its way from Sasuke's lips as he started to do hand signs of his own at the pace of a low chunin, which amused the wayward Sarutobi. Rearing the top of his body back, Sasuke exhaled a mouthful of flames. Fire release. Dragon Flamebomb. The fiery head of the dragon expanded once it hit the oxygen, using it to feed and grow as it traveled towards Orion, who looked the least bit concerned. The man's sigh was not heard because at the same time the dragon's maw roared, letting out a few embers from its mouth. Slamming the staff back into the ground, the Nuke Nin called out his next move in response to Sasuke's jutsu. Water release. Water encampment wall. Orion waited until he heard the hiss on the other side of his wall die before he dropped his shield. Seeing the man yawn while in the middle of battle feed Sasuke's anger, making it at least triple at how he was brushed away like some kind of civilian. The curse mark slowly started to spread down the side of his neck and under the collar of his black Uchiha clan wear. If you have anything better than that, Uchiha, I suggest you use it before you die. Orion said, suggesting the genin to do his best lest he die with regret. You are going to regret asking an Uchiha to show you their full power, because it will be the last thing that you will see in your pathetic life. During his rage-filled cry, Sasuke had performed the necessary actions to perform the legendary Chidori. The sounds of chirping brought a smirk to the B-rank missing nin. He would admit Sasuke was good, possibly mid-chunin material, but he was a junin in all but name. Before Sasuke had even rushed forward, Orion was already starting his hand signs. Sasuke was following the path of attack his Sharingan laid out for him so that his attack could go through the heart of Orion. A smirk made its way onto his face as he made the last 3 steps towards Orion, who just put his hands in the dirt. Earth release. Swamp of the underworld. Sasuke's eyes widened when he found that he couldn't move his legs at all and quickly looked down, finding his legs knee-deep in a thick mud. Without really thinking, Sasuke thrust his hand down into the mud, knowing that lightning was strong against earth. The plan was to free himself, then strike Orion with a second Chidori, killing him and restoring his pride. Then, much to Sasuke's shock, his hand was simply absorbed into the mud, leaving him in an even more compromised situation now that he lost his dominant hand. What? Lightning is supposed to be stronger than earth. Normally that would be true if this was a smaller area. The wide range of my jutsu disperses your current throughout the ground, making it much weaker than it would be under normal circumstances. Taking a few steps so he was in front of Sasuke, the man proceeded to place his hands in the ground, ignoring the fearful look on the face of the Konoha genin. Because the Sharingan shinobi was so afraid of what appeared to be his death, he missed the slight widening of Orion's eyes as he sensed something behind, but knew he was already too far into his jutsu to do something. I got too distracted playing with the Uchiha that I let my guard down, and now I am going to pay for it. Whoever that is chose their time to strike magnificently. Orion thought highly of the person behind him, waiting for the payment of his negligence. Wind release. Gauntlets of Fujin. Sasuke's eyes widened when he recognized the voice that belonged to Naomi as she appeared behind the man in a shunshin. Thrusting her arm into the man's gut, Naomi's wind-covered fist and forearm easily cut through the man's stomach, making him lurch forward. Coughing up blood, Orion's black eyes immediately dimmed as he faded out of consciousness. The young Jinchuriki pulled her arm out of the man's stomach, the wind keeping the blood from staining her clothing. Uzumaki emblazoned Chunin flak, and without the arm through his gut, the man fell onto his stomach. Stepping around the unconscious, bleeding Sarutobi, the redhead made her way to the still immobilized Sasuke. Grabbing him by the elbow, she used some of her chakra to yank him out of the mud cask that had him held firmly. Falling onto his rear, Sasuke grunted and his Sharingan faded, letting Naomi see the black eyes that were glaring at her. What was that technique and why couldn't I copy it? Sasuke demanded, not even thanking Naomi for helping him out of his tough situation. Please, like Ni-san would make a jutsu that someone like you could so easily copy. Even if my jutsu is incomplete, you still won't be copying it, Uchiha. Naomi said, literally looking down at the boy with a stern frown as she watched the curse marks crawl closer towards his eyes. She knew he was unstable, but she still wondered what he was thinking right now. I refuse to be saved by his jutsu and then be looked down on by the person using it. Sasuke growled, his eyes flashing back into the Sharingan as he tried to fire back up at Chidori, not seeing anything but red and the need to see blood at the end of his hand. Naomi jumped back and called on her gauntlets of Fujin, not just planning on lying down and dying for the idiot. However, before the two could come to blows, Kakashi appeared behind Sasuke and knocked him out, stopping the spread of the curse mark. Kakashi looked down sadly at the one student that reminded him so much of himself and sighed. Picking up the team, the silver-haired Junin looked to Naomi, who dropped back to a neutral stance. Let's go. Naruto appeared inside of the Hokage's office within the winds of a wind, Shunshin, his cool blue eyes set on the man behind the desk expectantly. Minato kept his sigh to himself as he noticed that Naruto had become much cooler towards he and Kushina as of late. He shook his head slightly because now was not the time for personal matters, there was business to attend to. Naruto, I am glad that you are here because I have a mission that requires your immediate attention. Minato's voice carried no small amount of relief, but also a tone of seriousness underneath that relief. The blonde Hokage almost expected an answer to come from his son until he realized just who it was that he was speaking to. Naruto never answered an open-ended statement like that unless it was needed. Naruto stood there, his patience growing thin with the man before him who had just interrupted something rather important to Naruto for this meeting. Then just when he was ready to really look into things, bang, there was a summons from the mighty yellow flash. This better be worth it or I am just going to walk out of that door and refuse the mission. A couple of hours ago I sent the Chunin Shikamaru Nara on a mission with a handful of genin to recover Sasuke Uchiha, who had voluntarily left the village to join Orochimaru, according to his teammate Sakura Haruno. With that being said, I want you to be their backup until I can get a Junin who can be sent out there as additional support. Minato said with a deep frown creating a wrinkle on his forehead. Internally, the blonde wondered just how all of his capable Junin could be busy at the same time and decided once this was all over, the system needed some reorganization. Naruto stood there absorbing the words of the fourth fire shadow with his eyes closed and his thoughts swarming. He knew it was only a matter of time that the curse mark corrupted Sasuke's weak will. The Avenger was determined to do the wrong things in life and his resolve could only be so much. I never have and probably never will like Sasuke, but I owe it to Makoto and Itachi-sensei to return him to his home, even though he barely sees Makoto-chan as a mother and hates Itachi-sensei. Opening his eyes, Naruto showed off a pair of fully matured Sharingan eyes. Minato watched silently as Naruto left just as he had entered in a gust of wind and sighed heavily, wondering just how he could make amends with his son, not knowing that they may have burnt that bridge by not showing any proof of being truly reconciliatory. He may not have given an answer, but I am sure that he will do the right thing. He has a far stronger code of honor than I do. The only person the Hokage could think of that would teach him that kind of code would be his teacher Itachi. Even though Naruto wouldn't admit who taught him, it was clear through the Crow contract and summons that Itachi was Naruto's teacher, at least to Minato. Itachi was always very fair, but he was never one to put his ideals on someone else actively, so who taught you how to act, Naruto? Minato asked himself, looking out through his window into the dark sky looming over the world. Naruto came to a sudden halt traveling under the moonlit night when he saw something out of the ordinary on ground level. Hopping off of the branch that he was standing on, Naruto walked towards what appeared to be a dome of rock and soil. Slowly strolling around the dome, Naruto saw that one whole side of the earthen structure was blown out. Naruto's keen inspection of the odd structure was suddenly halted when he heard what sounded like a bang followed by a loud crash only few hundred yards into the trees behind him. Narrowing his crimson eyes, Naruto quickly made his way into the forestry. At an urgent yet cautious pace, Naruto made his way through the thick woods, making sure to keep his eyes on the lookout for potential shinobi under the employ of one Snake Sanin. Naruto's cursed eyes picked up on an evil energy saturating the air as well as a visible chakra that was almost being suffocated by the evil energy that he assumed was the work of the curse mark. Naruto came to a sudden halt seeing when he saw two figures exchanging fists beneath him, with one being slammed into the ground and kicked away from the other figure who remained still. Choji was left panting as he tried to force himself to stand up despite all of the punishment that Jirobo, one of the Sound Four, had dealt. Managing to make it to a sitting position with the help of the tree that was supporting a majority of his weight, the exhausted Leaf Shinobi looked to his opponent whose skin was crimson thanks to the effects of the cursed mark. Another deep breath escaped from his opened lips before he looked down into his clenched hand, or more specifically what was in his hand. Unfurling his fingers, Choji was greeted by the sight of a small glass case that was separated into 3 equal compartments. The first 2 slots were empty, but the third and final compartment was filled by a small red pill. "Sorry Shikamaru, but this is the only way to keep this guy from going after you." With a somber smile on his face, Choji slipped his thumb under the lid and popped open the container. He didn't want to die, of course, but if it was to help his best friend, he'd do it 100 out of 100 times. "I have seen enough." Naruto's cool voice shocked both Oto and Konoha Shinobi as he suddenly appeared between Choji and Jirobo, the action stopping Choji from taking his third food pill and the imminent death that followed its use. Jirobo's eyes narrowed as he stared at the other Uchiha that his master had mentioned before they went to assist Sasuke. Natural curiosity took over as the Sound Nin's eyes slowly went higher to get a good look at the boy he was supposed to capture if he came across. Jirobo scoffed after his very brief examination of the young Uchiha, not thinking much of his appearance or his ability to be a worthy foe. Naruto watched as his opponent clearly tried to evaluate him just by appearance and could help but be reminded of the old adage of not judging a book by its cover. When he saw the man's gaze get drawn into the naturally hypnotic appearance of the Sharingan, Naruto's curled into a smirk, since he could easily win a battle if his opponent was going to let him use his ocular prowess. Sharingan Genjutsu. Sleep. Jirobo's head slumped forward after he stared back at Naruto for a few moments, making it easy for the Chunin to change the flow of chakra to the brain with the powers of his Sharingan. As soon as his consciousness fled from his frame, the curse mark transformation started to reverse itself, clearly needing its wielder to be conscious to have an effect. Freeing twilight from its bindings, Naruto channeled his lightning chakra through it, coating it with a violet chakra. Once Naruto was close enough, he quickly drove the length of his katana through the man's heart, killing him instantly. Yanking his blade free of the larger, dead man, the charm he had received from Narumi flicked and bounced off his hand. Making a shadow clone to explain things to Choji, Naruto raced ahead, knowing he still had a number of issues left to deal with, leaving the Kage Bunshin to take the injured Akamichi back to Konoha. Naruto had only traveled another 5 minutes closer to the land of patties when he came upon another pair of bodies stewed about on the forest floor. Coming to a crouched stop, the first pulse Naruto checked was that of Neji's, and he could tell the genin was in critical condition. Wasting no time, he had a shadow clone bring back Neji's body while Naruto used a fire jutsu to burn the body of the dead Oto nin. That's 2 dead Orochimaru servants and 2 living Konoha genin. The mission has gone well thus far, but can they hold out long enough for me to stop that fool? Naruto said, looking up as a faint, black cloud passed over the moon, covering its brilliance to his eyes. Blowing the bang out of his eye, Naruto quickly took off to see who he would find next. The leader of the team sent by Konoha was currently crouching down on the limb of a tree, frowning at the smirking Sound Kunoichi across from him. His mission had gone terribly thus far because he had lost a member in pursuit of Sasuke each time an enemy came to fight them, which was not best for the success of the mission, and he knew it. He only hoped that Lee could manage to stop Sasuke before he made it past the border, where he would be lost for who knows how long. This is a disaster. I should have come up with a better strategy. I am the squad leader. It is expected of me. The red-headed Kunoichi from Otogakure saw the frustration on the shadow manipulator's face and smirked cruelly at his distress, her skin and eyes also heavily morphed thanks to the influence of Orochimaru's curse mark. What's the matter, leaf fucker? Did you just realize how useless it is for such a weakling to fight Orochimaru-sama's power? It even appeared that she had horns growing from the side of her head, truly topping off the devilish visage that Tayuya had gained due to the curse mark. Getting back up to a standing position, Shikamaru glared at the vulgar woman while trying to formulate a plan that could get him close enough so he could finish her, but there was a problem. The problem was the sound-based genjutsu that she used that kept him away or he'd be captured and killed. Shikamaru began to mumble to himself as his brain worked on trying to come up with some kind of plan while on the fly and nearing defeat. Damn it. Why did Kiba have to run off without thinking? How do I get her to lose the flute? Perhaps I can help you with that problem, Naruto said just before he dropped onto the tree limb that Shikamaru was positioned on. His sudden appearance had Shikamaru staring at him in both immense relief and surprise, not thinking they'd be getting support so soon or from the person he couldn't find when creating this team. Originally Naruto was the second choice for the team after Choji, but Shikamaru couldn't find him even after asking Fu, who was at his apartment complex. Another weak-ass fucker comes to die. That's fine with me. The question and following statement came from Tayuya's mouth as she smirked at Naruto, who returned her look with an emotionless Sharingan stare. The redhead frowned at the lack of a response from the raven-haired Uzumaki, not finding taunts any fun if there was no response. It was like trying to have a meaningful conversation with a wall. Wait, if you are coming from that way, that means that Choji and Neji are. Shikamaru trailed off before Naruto shook his head with a small smirk, telling Shikamaru silently that their comrades were just fine, not that they wanted Tayuya to know that. Some secrets were better left off unsaid after all. What a foul mouth. Naruto said more to himself than to either Shikamaru or the now sneering Tayuya. Shaking his head, Naruto decided that analyzing his opponent's mannerisms would be meaningless. The Chunin turned to Shikamaru, who looked much more relaxed than he was before Naruto's arrival. What can you tell me about her skills? Naruto asked, trusting the Nara's ability to deduce just how capable an opponent was. There really isn't much tell other than she is capable of producing sound-based genjutsu thanks to that flute of hers, but that shouldn't be a problem for you, which is good because I am running low on chakra. Shikamaru admitted, taking a deep breath as he watched Tayuya go for the flute that she lowered down once Naruto arrived on the scene. Backup in a one-on-one fight meant that he had an advantage now in the form of a fresh body. Naruto looked away from Shikamaru towards Tayuya, who was still glaring at Naruto for whatever reason. Then out of nowhere Naruto shook his head silently, confusing Shikamaru as to why he did so. The Sharingan may be the ultimate tool for genjutsu, but that only works out on vision-based genjutsu. However, I have a plan of my own to finish this woman off quickly. Shikamaru frowned at that piece of knowledge but nodded, curious as to what Naruto had planned for their shared opponent. I will allow myself to be captured in her genjutsu, but at the same time capture her in one of my own. This will give you the opening to finish the job. Naruto's confidence in him surprised the Nara, since most people would think he would do something lazy at the most important time, but not Naruto. Giving Naruto one last glance, Shikamaru eventually nodded with a small sigh escaping from his lips, since he knew Naruto would not back down because he clearly thought that this was the best plan of attack. He maneuvered his hands so he could perform his shadow possession technique if he needed to. Troublesome. Fine, we will do things your way, but just be careful. I don't need your sisters kicking my ass because you got careless. Shikamaru wasn't certain, but he was sure that Naruto shot him an amused smirk before he took off directly at Tayuya. The red-haired woman looked at Naruto with a single eyebrow cocked in an act of surprise, since she was sure he would be smarter than that, but an easy win was a win that she'd take. Bringing the mouthpiece of her flute up to her lips, Tayuya began to play a beautiful, yet haunting melody that traveled at Naruto at the speed of sound. Naruto could feel the chakra-infused sound invading his ears, and no sooner did his body start to freeze up on a branch only 2 hops away from the red-headed musician. Feigning an act of defiance, Naruto glared into her eyes while keeping a victorious smirk from his lips as he thought the name of his own genjutsu. Demonic illusion. False surroundings. Man fucker, you sure are stupid to get caught just like that. Seriously, how shitty of a shinobi are you? Tayuya asked, making a complete mockery of Naruto's shinobi skills as she used her flute to summon Doki so she could make use of another of her techniques. Her eyes panned to Shikamaru, who appeared to be standing in the same spot glaring at her thanks to Naruto's genjutsu. It's time for you to die, shithead. Revolt of the Demon World. Once again Tayuya started to play a melody using her flute as a catalyst. Naruto's eyes could only watch as a phantasm slowly crawled out of the mouth of the big, humanoid creature standing behind the musician. The only things clearly materialized on the ghostly body were mouths with sharp teeth barred. Suddenly the ghost moved towards him and took a bite out of his side. Naruto could feel most of his chakra leave him, which concerned him. Luckily for Naruto, before the spirit could take a second meal from him, the Oto Kunoichi's eyes widened and her technique and genjutsu fell without her ability to keep it sustained. What the? The redhead asked in a confused stammer when she dropped her flute for no reason, then found that she couldn't move her body at all to retrieve it. Naruto ignored her and walked forward, canceling his Sharingan to recover some of his chakra. Reaching behind his back for Twilight, Naruto was stopped from ending his second Oto Nin by Shikamaru's voice. "No, Naruto. I will take care of this one," Shikamaru said seriously, stopping the raven-haired Chunin in his place. Naruto's blue eyes trailed past the fearful Oto Nin to Shikamaru, where the two engaged in a silent staring competition. Naruto was looking for any uncertainty, but seeing nothing but determination, he nodded and stopped just before grabbing his katana. Sending Naruto a nod of gratitude, the Nara heir made a slight change to his hand sign. Shadow sowing. From the one tendril of darkness that linked Shikamaru to Tayuya came 8 others, 4 on each side. Every single wisp of darkness waved about unpredictably before they all suddenly tensed, and then just like that each tendril became tangible and sewed themselves into Tayuya's rigid body. A resounding cry of pain and some blood came from the Kunoichi's mouth before one last tendril went clean through her heart, ending her momentary torture. Feeling no resistance at the end of his shadows, Shikamaru called off his technique with a small sigh as he stared down at the lifeless body he had just created, trying to come to terms with what he just did. He was snapped out from his funk when Naruto put his hand on the Nara's shoulder. Knowing Naruto wasn't one to have the whole feelings conversation, Shikamaru went straight to business. "Hiba trailed off to fight another one of those sound nin, so I'll go help him, then we will both return to the village. Lee went ahead after Sasuke, so you go on ahead and finish the mission and I'll see you back at the village." Staring at Shikamaru, whose shoulders were slumped slightly and a tired grin put on his face, Naruto eventually nodded and vanished within a wind shunshin, leaving the Nara to go and fetch his Inuzuka teammate. "Sasuke-kun, I beg you to return back to Konoha. Don't let Orochimaru dampen your flames of youth with his nasty curse mark. Think about Sakura-chan and all of your friends back at home." The green spandex-wearing Leaf Genin tried to help his comrade see reason through what he thought was best, and that was sentiment. Lee could see the vile markings spread across Sasuke's face along with a swirl of dark energy, but could not act because of the man standing between he and Sasuke. It was truly annoying to be so close to your goal yet still being so far away. Sasuke's head slowly turned to look at whoever it was that called his name, the shadows of the night covering the half of his face except for the one Sharingan eye that glowed a menacing red to go perfectly with the evil chakra embracing him. "All of you back in that village are nothing but fools who know nothing about pain or power. Orochimaru has the power that I need to make my ambitions reality. You who cannot even perform a single jutsu are not in a position to convince me of anything." With what he felt that needed to be said, Sasuke looked back to the border of his home and his power, Orochimaru's power in the curse mark, drawing him towards the snake Sannin. Taking off into the woods, Lee could only clench his fists in frustration, since it was clear the man with the ability to manipulate his bones would not let him pass. "This would be easier if I could use the inner gates, but Gai-sensei made me promise not to use them again until my body was completely healed. I will just have to beat Kimimaro-san with my guts and determination." When it looked like Sasuke would make it to the snake summoner without any kind of resistance, a black blur raced across the field hot on his tracks. Of course this person was seen by both Kimimaro and Lee, but neither shinobi took a step towards the person as they sped across the grassy field. Soon the rustling of the leaves and the sound of their movements left the area, leaving both Kagaya and Taijutsu user alone in the night. "You did not attack my fellow Leaf Shinobi when you had the perfect chance to do so. May I ask why that is, Kimimaro-san?" Lee asked before dropping into his strong fist taijutsu stance, wondering just how he would crack the dead bone pulse of his counterpart from the village hidden by the sound. "If I had attacked that boy, then you would have had the perfect chance to strike me down, possibly before even I could reach him. With Orochimaru-sama's power flowing in Sasuke's veins, there is not a single chance that he will lose," Kimimaro said emotionlessly as 2 bone swords popped from his forearms, giving him a pair of weapons to use against the close-ranged fighter. "I may not like you, Uchiha, but you are the only person that can save Sasuke-kun. I know that will bring a smile to Sakura's face, so for her sake I hope that you will succeed." Lee thought before lowering himself so he could do rid with the leg weights that were wrapped around his lower shins. Sasuke came to a stop inside of the Valley of the End, the place where the final, legendary clash between Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha occurred. It was the place where Hashirama put down the legendary traitor to the leaf and returned to his home the conquering hero. It was a place that reminded Sasuke of how much prejudice was directed at the Uchiha, where even history mocked them. Sasuke looked down to his hands with a smirk as the curse marks spread around his body, now completely putting him in stage 1 of his progression. He never felt better, however not once had he felt so powerful. Not when he first learnt the Grand Fireball, not even when he learnt the Chidori from Kakashi. No, it was clear to the Uchiha that it was Orochimaru's power that made him strongest, and this feeling only solidified his decision. Glancing behind him with his Sharingan blazing, Sasuke disappeared in a leaf shunshin. Cutting through the air that Sasuke was just occupying was a wave of gray energy that cut deeply into the shins of the Madara statue. The cut was deep but not deep enough to cause the statue to fall. Sasuke reappeared clinging to Madara's thigh with his chakra, staring smugly at Naruto, who was standing on the rocks at the base of the waterfall, slowly putting his katana back, seeing that his last move failed. I should have known you'd be the one to come before me. You want one more last taste of true power before I go and get even stronger? Sasuke asked smugly, looking into Naruto's blue eyes as he dropped down to stand on the feet of Madara's statue. He felt proud being able to brag about the special power the curse mark was infusing him with. Even though Sasuke couldn't see it, Naruto was arching the eyebrow that was behind the bang that fell over his left eye. Despite seeing and hearing it so many times, Naruto still couldn't comprehend what drove Sasuke to make such a proclamation. Even his pride didn't need that kind of stroking, and he was a clan head. I am here because the Hokage asked me to retrieve you. Personally, I think you are a waste of time and space. Who thinks he is important because he was spoiled by the parasites in the village? Naruto replied in a cool voice, telling Sasuke of what he had felt since the day he ran into him on the way to Nami no Kuni. Sasuke glared hatefully at the Uchiha standing at the base of the waterfall for the way he spoke of him. What made the insults worse was the way they were said, the cold tone cutting deeper than any words could cut. Sasuke couldn't believe his power was still in doubt, but he would show Naruto once and for all. That's it. I will kill you here and throw your body in the river. Naruto's blue eyes showed alarm when Sasuke suddenly appeared in front of him and punched him in hard. The power of the punch carried Naruto's body into one of the rocky walls that encompassed the valley. Groaning in pain, Naruto looked up to see Sasuke already on top of his position with a cruel smirk on his face. Naruto covered his face with his arms, allowing Sasuke to continuously pound his fists into the Hokage's son's stomach. He's faster with the curse mark. Without my Sharingan up, I can't keep good enough track of his movements to counter or dodge. I need to up my speed for certain after this is all over. How do you like that, you bastard of an Uchiha? Do you still think I am a waste of space now? Huh. Sasuke shouted at Naruto between his laughter, the strikes coming in too quick for the blonde to substitute. Over and over his fists came raining down on Naruto's body, much to the pleasure of the curse mark warrior. Grabbing Sasuke's wrist as he threw another careless but powerful punch was enough for Naruto to break Sasuke's continuous assault. Looking into the face of the angry avenger, Naruto held the tiger sign with his free hand. Fire release. Grand Fireball. Thanks to the proximity of the two, the flames blasted into Sasuke's face before they could expand and become more powerful. The weakened fires only served to push Sasuke off Naruto and towards the opposite canyon wall, which was what Naruto wanted. Sasuke stood on the opposite wall laughing as Naruto stood up, some blood trickling down from his mouth. When he stopped laughing, Sasuke looked at Naruto like an insect waiting to be crushed. You call that a fire jutsu? Here, let me show you some true fire power, you imposter. Sasuke quickly went through the signs for what was becoming his favorite fire jutsu. Fire release. Dragon Flame Bomb. Naruto called upon his Sharingan when he saw that Sasuke was ready to call a fire jutsu, knowing he might not get another chance to activate it if he returned to taijutsu. Naruto, who was ready to exchange with his own fire jutsu, called his own powerful flame technique. Fire release. Majestic Flame Destroyer. The fierce-looking dragon skull rushed out towards the center of the river where it met the expanding wall of flames that was originating from Naruto's mouth. The two flames swallowed each other over the center of the river, lighting up the valley in a glorious orange glow. The surface of the water reflected the struggle of one fire trying to overtake the other until both flames died into embers that flickered into the night sky. The moment both flames were gone, the two Uchiha met in the center of the river, fist meeting fist, as each tried to overtake the other with a fierce taijutsu approach. Sasuke found that the small advantage that the curse mark had given him was neutralized by the Sharingan, though to Naruto's growing agitation he couldn't land any kind of meaningful blow either. Both fighters sensed this and pushed back, taking a stand at other ends of the riverbanks. Standing there panting slightly, Naruto took the time to recover the chakra he was running low on thanks to the two fights prior and the chakra-draining ghost. The raven-haired clan head knew he could only perform one more jutsu like his majestic flame destroyer on his own chakra. Tell me, Sasuke, how does it feel to know that even with the snake's power you are only on even footing with me? Sasuke snarled at Naruto for saying what he did. Even if it was true, Sasuke still desired to have more strength than Naruto. It was this desire that triggered stage 2 of the curse mark, using his anger and hatred to feed itself. Sasuke's skin started to turn dark gray, his eyes morphing back to normal before changing to yellow four-pointed stars. His lips changed to a blue color and two fleshy wings sprouted from his back like some kind of corrupted angel. Would you look at that? It seems like I do have more power in store that makes me special, Naruto. Too bad you don't have anything like that to save your life. Sasuke spoke condescendingly as he started to gather chakra in his hand. Strangely enough, Sasuke's chakra began to show signs of turning black, but before it could finish, Sasuke's Chidori was completed and his wings carried him towards Naruto. Naruto, seeing the speed at which Sasuke was traveling, quickly activated his Fujin no Yoroi and raced towards Sasuke, his speed amplified by the wind. Taking his katana out and flowing wind-natured chakra through the blade, Naruto's eyes tried to find a way to strike without being stabbed by the Chidori, and when he thought he found a way, Sasuke shifted. The new pattern of flight struck Naruto in the shoulder, but it was only glancing while Naruto's blade impaled itself into one of Sasuke's wings. Both teens' bodies registered the pain at the same time, resulting in simultaneous cries of pain. Naruto skidded back holding his bleeding shoulder while Sasuke went down, spiraling into the water twilight, making it impossible for his aerial capabilities to work. Naruto stood there on one knee as his wind armor faded away thanks to Naruto not having enough chakra to maintain the jutsu. He looked over to the bubbles coming up just in front of the waterfall and tried to contact the Kyuubi. Kyuubi, I know I don't ask to use your chakra, but I am running low and need a boost. The Kyuubi, who heard his plea, grunted in acknowledgement as he slowly pushed some of his potent yokai into Naruto's system. Very well, I shall give you some of my power, but you can only handle one tail since we didn't do any training as of yet. Also, not even Kami will help you should you lose to that brat. Naruto nodded to the Kyuubi's warning, and just before a red cloak of vibrant yokai shrouded him, the Kyuubi's cloak. Naruto's eyes faded from Sharingan red with 3 tomo to a crimson red with a vertical slit in the center. One tail of red energy formed, swaying behind him as the regenerative yokai went to work patching up Naruto's shoulder wound. Breaking the surface of the water was Naruto's twilight, and the blade was flying directly for his head, but before the projectile could reach its destination, the tail behind Naruto looped around the handle, catching it easily. By the time Naruto put his katana away, Sasuke was standing on the water in front of the waterfall looking at Naruto in shock, his wing bleeding slightly. You thought you were the only special one around here, Sasuke. The power of the Kyuubi distorted Naruto's voice, making it sound truly dark and powerful, the result of which infuriating the rage-driven Sasuke. Once again a chirping filled the area, overtaking the sound of the waterfall, only this time the chakra was completely black and corrupted. I will show you what's special, as you freak. Sasuke shouted, not really knowing what that evil red energy was, an energy that was even eviler than the curse mark. Naruto said nothing in response of the poorly thought out insult, deciding that actions would serve him far better than words in this situation. Opening his right hand, a fierce, compressed wind started to compact itself in Naruto's hand, creating a vacuum effect inside of the sphere. Naruto's wind sphere turned into a crimson shade of red thanks to the Kyuubi's power lingering in his system as the primary power source. Both shinobi launched themselves at the other with their attacks ready. Chidori. Wind release. Demon vacuum sphere. The piercing lightning technique met the powerful wind sphere in a huge collision that pushed off waves of chakra off of each shinobi as their attacks clashed like a battle of wills. Sasuke's curse mark enhanced Chidori slowly started to crack through the red vacuum sphere, an initial success. However, before the stab could cut any deeper, Naruto's affinity advantage and powerful Biju energy won out and broke through the lightning with a massive explosion that went off in Sasuke's face, sending him rocketing back into the waterfall and into the rock wall behind it. Naruto too was caught in the blast, but the Kyuubi's cloak protected him from the damage of the explosion. Naruto called off the protective cloak of demonic energy with a rare smile on his face as he started to walk off to the waterfall. He had gotten in 3 progressively more difficult fights and had come out victorious each time, pushing himself to new limits even he didn't know he had. Now all he needed to do was retrieve the cargo, if you will, and it was all over. Or that's what he thought until he heard someone speak from behind him. "Hello, Naruto-kun." Naruto called off the protective cloak of demonic energy with a rare smile on his face as he started to walk off to the waterfall. He had gotten in 3 progressively more difficult fights and had come out victorious each time, pushing himself to new limits even he didn't know he had. Now all he needed to do was retrieve the cargo, if you will, and it was all over. Or that's what he thought until he heard someone speak from behind him. "Hello, Naruto-kun." Turning around alarmed that someone had gotten behind him so easily, Naruto knew this would not be good for his health. If this person was capable of sneaking up behind him, then there was no doubt that they would easily be able to kill him in his weakened state. All of those mortem thoughts vanished, however, when Naruto's blue eyes met with the familiar stoic expression of his sensei and the brother of the shinobi he had just battled, Itachi Uchiha. Of course, Naruto knew that he was called one of Konohagakure's greatest traitors, but in Naruto's somewhat biased opinion, his sensei was nothing like the snake Sannin. Naruto's breathing was still heavy as the toll of using most of his chakra, then the exhaustion from accessing the Kyuubi's chakra slowly continued to take effect on his tired body. He smiled a tired smile at the welcome sight of his favorite sensei. "Itachi-sensei, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be out with Mihawk-sensei traveling around doing whatever it is you two do?" Sure, the raven-haired Uzumaki was glad to see him, but that didn't mean he wasn't confused as to the reason Itachi was here. Itachi ignored Naruto's question in favor of looking towards the waterfall where he knew his brother had just been sent towards before looking back at Naruto emotionlessly. He had a few questions that needed to be answered himself, such as, was Danzo involved in this at all? "I was coming to the Leaf so I could check on you like I planned on doing before the Chunin exams, but something came up that took a majority of my time until a few weeks ago." That brought a smile to Naruto's face, since he never really had anyone checking up on him aside from Makoto and Hiruzen, but here Itachi would travel across the continent to check up on him. It just felt good to know that the man he saw as a big brother cared about him enough to put himself at an inconvenience. Naruto did note that Itachi's eyes kept flickering between he and the waterfall, but Itachi didn't comment on it. However, right now he didn't care. He was finally seeing his sensei after so long and he wanted to enjoy it. "Now that I am here, I need to tell you about the person, or I should say group, that caused me the delay, because it will more than likely involve you eventually, Naruto-kun," Itachi said with a slight frown on his usually emotionless face. He didn't like the idea of a group of S-rank nuke nin going after his student and surrogate little brother. Naruto watched silently as Itachi brought his hand up towards his eyes, where he then pointed specifically to his Sharingan-enhanced gaze. Understanding the silent message, Naruto brought his dwindling chakra to his eyes, unleashing his own pair of cursed eyes. The two then locked gazes, where the younger shinobi allowed his sensei to put him under a harmless genjutsu that was meant for Itachi to be able to share his memories with the Uzumaki clan head. It would show Naruto that he and Mihawk had encountered the Akatsuki and the gold that the missing nin allowed to leak in his confidence. However, just as they got to the point between the point of no return and where the information was about to be transferred, Sasuke emerged out of the waterfall sporting a massive spot of red flesh around his stomach, showing that Naruto pulled back so only the demonic chakra seared his skin. The furious and equally exhausted Sasuke looked ahead, but from his position Sasuke could only see Naruto's back and not his brother, who was ahead of Naruto. The Avenger's lips twisted into a smirk as he fired up the last Chidori he'd be able to manage until he was fully recovered. The sounds of the chirping birds created by the powerful lightning release technique went unheard by the two in the genjutsu world. Sasuke, seizing his opportunity, lunged forward and drove his hand through Naruto's chest, just barely missing the heart. Naruto's eyes widened when he was cut from the genjutsu, and his vision already faded from the Sharingan and started to get bleary. Looking ahead, Naruto saw that Itachi seemed to still be looking on stoically as he coughed up a mouthful of blood, and before he could gather any thoughts on the matter, he was unconscious. Sasuke's satisfied smirk turned to a downright furious expression when he saw his brother of all people standing there. Ignoring that horrified look on Itachi's face, the curse mark warrior ripped his arm from Naruto's chest before throwing him into the water with a loud splash. Seeing the source of his hatred, Sasuke's curse mark went straight into stage 2. The hate-filled nin quickly went to perform another Chidori that would have surely killed him until he felt a sharp pain on the back of his neck. Sasuke fell forward only to be caught, or more specifically draped over the arm of a man in the Akatsuki's robes with an orange spiral mask showing off one dark hole so the person behind it could see. Itachi, who watched the whole thing happen in less than a second, from the man appearing to knocking out Sasuke, and the elder of the siblings immediately reacted, firing off a grand fireball, but sadly the man had already absorbed Sasuke into a black wormhole and the ball of flames passed through him harmlessly. Ah. Why would you try and set Toby on fire? Toby is a good boy. The masked man, now named Toby, asked in a childish voice that could easily make any person think that he was an idiot. Itachi, though, knew better. He remembered this man from the night that he slaughtered the Uchiha clan, and he knew that he was no good. Drop the act. I remember you full well from when you contacted me the night of the Uchiha clan's massacre to join the Akatsuki. What do you want with Sasuke? Itachi hissed angrily, seeing how his brother was just abducted. Even with all of his Anbu training to control his emotions, he still couldn't tame the great love he held for his brother. Toba's lips twitched into an amused but satisfied smirk behind his swirling orange mask, seeing how the calm Uchiha started to show any kind of emotion. Of course he had plans for Sasuke, but Itachi didn't need to know what that plan was. Seeing no point in holding up the childlike charade, Toby spoke in a much deeper voice. It doesn't matter what I want with Sasuke. If you care so much, stay alive and find out. Goodbye, Itachi Uchiha. Then, like he was never there in the first place, Toby was sucked into a black wormhole that came through the space behind him. Itachi stared angrily at the spot that Toby once occupied before shaking his head and hurrying down the river, his Sharingan desperately searching for Naruto's body, which he found was quickly traveling towards a shallow set of rapids. Pumping chakra through his system, Itachi hurried to Naruto's aid, pulling him out of the current before the rocks below could do any more damage to Naruto's delicate state. Laying the unconscious, wounded shinobi on the ground, Itachi prepared the mystic palm jutsu until he felt a familiar signature closing in and fast. The Uchiha prodigy knew who this person was and had no desire to be around her, especially when she was angry. Taking a step back, Itachi proceeded to vanish in a perfectly executed shunshin, and just before the person he was avoiding made her presence on the scene. Eyes wide in fear and disbelief, Kushina looked at the sight of her son bleeding, and she acted quickly, getting a stasis seal ready to apply to Naruto. Sochi. A pained groan escaped from Naruto's lips as he woke up, eyes slowly blinking the sleep out of them as the seconds ticked by. After a few moments in the silence of the dark hospital room, Naruto managed to get a grasp on just where he was. He remembered going back to recover Sasuke, but it was dark then as it was now, so for all Naruto knew he could have been out a day or a week. The thing that had the young shinobi stumped was how all of this happened, because he was 100% sure that he had everything under control back at the Valley of the End, so that raised the question of happened to put him in such a state. Closing his eyes, Naruto began and tried to recall what happened after he had put Sasuke in the waterfall. In the silence and dark, the hospitalized Uzumaki continued to recall things his mind had locked away from him, and in the end he broke through that mental barrier. He remembered Itachi showing up and talking with him about a few things, then shortly after putting him under a genjutsu. Slowly Naruto's mind pieced together his own version of what happened, and the end result made the teen's blood boil. He knew that Itachi was looking towards Sasuke a little too often for his liking. So in Naruto's mind it made perfect sense that it was a way for him to stall enough so that his brother could recover. The genjutsu was it all just a move to put Naruto in a position that he couldn't protect himself from Sasuke's Chidori. He always knew that Itachi loved Sasuke even for all of his faults, and there were quite a few. Naruto sat up and glared at the wall in front of him as he hissed in pain, putting his hand to his chest, only making it worse, but it didn't quite compare to the hurt he was feeling psychologically. I always knew that Itachi loved being a big brother, even if it was to someone as spoiled and arrogant as Sasuke, but I always thought he cherished the bond we had as much as I did. Why would he even train me if it meant he was going to stab me in the back later on? Naruto asked in nothing more than a whisper as he gripped at the sheets pooling around his waist, his anger growing the more he thought about what happened. He even remembered his own last sight before passing out, and he swore it was clear as day. He didn't even look surprised. Naruto's knuckles went white as he continued to force as much of his physical strength as he possibly could into his grip, as if it could do off with some of his anger, but it only continued to grow as Naruto put everything in a greater perspective. Why is it that everyone I am supposed to be able to trust wrongs me? I trusted my parents to give me a life of care and nurturing, instead I was left with neglect and abandonment. I trusted the village to be a place where I could live in peace and be safe. I got a massive mob of citizens who would only allow me to be in peace when it was in a grave they sent me to. I was supposed to be able to trust Itachi to be my big brother, but instead I was pushed away in favor for a self-absorbed megalomaniac. Why is it I am the one left in the trash? Naruto shouted out towards the open window like the answer would come to him. The anger and feeling of betrayal fueled Naruto's ocular powers, and his red and black eyes slowly began to transform. The black tomo in each eye suddenly grew and turned each eye completely black. Slowly a red flower sprung out in the center of each purely black eye. The red flower became more defined as each second went by. The petals of the Japanese rose that were each started to get much more curved, to the point that every flower petal looked like a small reaper's blade. The pain of awakening his Mangekyo Sharingan quickly took its effect. Reaching for his eyes, Naruto clamped down on his skull with his hand, but before he could pass out on due to the pain, he felt something land on his lap. Peering through the spaces between his fingers with his Mangekyo, Naruto smiled, seeing that it was Susei. Are you okay, Naruto-kun? I could feel your distress building through our link, and I hurried over as fast as I could. Susei asked with no small amount of concern as she looked into Naruto's floral-patterned Mangekyo eye with a matching set on her face. Staring into the eyes of his familiar, Naruto knew that her eyes evolved as his did, so he realized just what had happened. He had finally gained his next Sharingan, so it looked like Itachi's betrayal had served him some good. Yes, but we are both about to pass out, Susei, but can I ask you a question before that happens? Naruto asked, his voice soft and his Mangekyo fading back to his normal blue eyes as he waited for the crow's response. Susei tilted her head to the side, her own eyes going back towards the standard black for crows before she nodded slowly, telling Naruto to go ahead and speak his mind. Please promise me that you'll always be there when I need you. Susei stayed silent for a few moments, but not because she had to think about the answer. It was because she had never heard Naruto sound so vulnerable. He was always so strong, steadfast. I will always be at your side, Naruto-kun. What are partners for if not that? Susei's answer brought a small chuckle from Naruto before he and Susei both succumbed to sleep so their bodies could adjust to the new powers in their eyes. Naruto's azure eyes made their way towards the door to his hospital room, where there was a soft click on the other side of the door. He was wondering when someone would come to check on him, but he did realize he woke up just after sunrise, so he did expect to have to wait some time for someone to come and do the checkup. From his slightly reclined position, Naruto felt a sense of relief seeing that Shizune would be the one doing his checkup. With her as the medic, Naruto knew that he wouldn't have to worry with any unfair treatment and that her decision would be the best for him. Hello, Naruto-san. I am surprised to see you up so early this morning. Shizune spoke, walking into the room with a friendly smile that Naruto knew to be normal for the female medic. The pupil of Tsunade and walked towards the chart at the foot of Naruto's bed, so she was sure about the last recorded results from the previous night and didn't make a careless mistake. From his slightly inclined position on the hospital bed, Naruto nodded his head slightly, since he was sure that as a medic she was used to walking into a room with a sleeping patient or at least a drowsy patient. I am sure that my body knows it has been bedridden long enough. If I may ask, Shizune-san, how long have I been under your care? Humming to herself, Shizune finished her assessment of the medical records on hand for the Uzumaki clan head before she walked to the side of the hospitalized teen's bed with a gentle smile. Activating the mystical palm jutsu, the medic Nin began to perform maintenance procedures on Naruto's body. It has been 4 days since Kushina-san brought you back from the Valley of the End and you have been here ever since. Naruto closed his eyes and remained still so Shizune's hands could take inventory and discover if there were any lingering problems with his health. Naruto opened his eyes and looked to his caretaker for the assessment on his health. Well, Naruto, everything is fine aside from the massive scarring on the right side of your chest. The only major problem is that to get your arm back to full capacity you will need to go through physical therapy. Now Naruto had a general base of knowledge on many things, something that only increased after he became the clan head of the Uzumaki here in Konoha, but that did not mean he knew everything, and this was one of those cases. His face scrunched a bit as he tried to think why that was. Shizune picked that up and immediately began to explain the situation to her patient so he could understand what was going to be expected of him. The lightning nature of the attack that struck you did a number on the nerves and muscles in your arm, so if you want to be able to use it as effectively as before you are going to have to rehab the muscles in it. A despondent sigh made its way out of the raven-haired teen's lips as he seemed to sink into the mattress he was on top of. He really didn't like the sound of that because that meant he was going to be stuck inside of the village when he really liked to be out on missions or training if the first option wasn't available, but with his arm in shambles he wouldn't even be able to do that. Naruto looked at Shizune with a look of fake optimism because he doubted this would work, but it was worth a shot. I doubt that means I can go out and start training again. No, you cannot, and as the person who has chosen to take the role of your physical therapist, I strictly forbid you from doing anything that will put too much stress on that arm until it has been properly treated. If you need to train, then train your mind. Shizune said with a playful smirk that made Naruto grumble under his breath. Shizune was about to leave the room until she turned back to Naruto, who was looking up at the ceiling. Oh, and Naruto, you have visitors. Who are they? Naruto asked without removing his eyes from the ceiling overhead, but his voice did carry a certain amount of intrigue. Makoto-san and Hiruzen-sama, along with your family, they are all waiting outside in one of the waiting rooms to hear if they can come back here. Shizune saw Naruto's eyes take a hardened glint at the mention of his family. She knew that the relationship between them was extremely strained and she would listen to what Naruto would say since it was her job to make sure he wasn't stressed during his stay at the hospital. If I only see Makoto-chan and the old man, then Minato and Kushina would surely insist on coming here, and I don't want to have to make Shizune deal with that. I can just see Naomi and Narumi and talk to the Makoto-chan and the old man later. Naruto thought to himself, sighing softly since he could feel the fatigue trying to come back. Can you send my sisters in and tell the others that I don't want too many people back at once? Naruto requested, looking back at Shizune, who looked a little confused but nodded anyways since he requested it. The medic knew that Naruto disliked his sisters, or so she thought, but if he was asking for them then maybe they had started to make amends. She smiled at the thought and at Naruto since it seemed like he was maturing because it took a strong person to forgive another. Nodding, Shizune left the room, leaving Naruto and Susei, who was resting near the windowsill, making Naruto chuckle. Hearing footsteps coming towards his room, Naruto instantly appeared more stoic, just on the off chance that Minato tried to pull the Hokage card on Shizune, therefore disregarding his request. The door opened and in stepped both of his sisters with small smiles, seeing their brother up and not sleeping like he had been for what felt like an eternity to them. Naomi took another step forward with her hands behind her back, getting Naruto to arch an eyebrow. She quickly brought her hands in front of her and showed Naruto a rather large stuffed bear, which he stared blankly at, making Naomi nervous while Narumi tried to stifle her laughter seeing the odd scene. The more the moments went by, the more that the young red-headed Kunoichi thought that her gift was going to be rejected. Naruto couldn't hold it any longer and his stoic appearance crumbled as he began to laugh, surprising both of his sisters who had never heard the sound. Narumi, who was the smarter of the two, knew why and soon joined in, giggling into her hand. All the laughter around her made Naomi embarrassed, which the heavy blush on her cheeks represented. She voiced her irritation, trying her best to not start stammering as they continued to laugh. What's so funny, you two? Naruto, who was breathing heavily due to his heavy laughter, sat completely up, hoping to get more air into his lungs before they started to burn from being deprived of oxygen. Moving his hands away from his ribs, Naruto looked over to the pouting Naomi with a slight grin on his face. What makes you think that someone like me would want something like that, Naomi? Naruto asked, actually interested to hear the reasoning behind her thoughtful but childish gesture. You may be strong, Ni-san, but you have to recover, and things like these are meant for people who are recovering, you big jerk. Naomi said in mock anger, though on the inside she was glad to see this side of her brother. The same for Narumi, who was watching with a smile. Acting stubbornly, Naomi pushed the teddy bear into Naruto's chest, unknowingly pushing against his still hurting torso. Narumi moved forward and put her hand on Naruto's shoulder when he recoiled as the bear pushed up on his still tender scar. Narumi moved her hand back and forth on his shoulder soothingly while Naomi looked fearful, thinking she really hurt her brother, something she never wanted to do. Are you okay, Naruto-kun? Letting out a deep breath, Naruto slowly nodded his head, looking to both Naomi and Narumi with an easing smile. He gently removed Narumi's hand and sat up straight, rolling his stiff neck, hoping to work out a few kinks. I am fine. It's not her fault that there was a massive hole in my chest. Naruto spoke dryly while also making note to thank the Kyuubi when it was up again for fixing his chest. He knew the great chakra monster could heal his arm, but if he did not, then Naruto would not ask him to. Narumi's sky blue eyes widened at the admission of her brother and how nonchalantly he could say something as serious as that. Narumi stared sternly at her brother, making him wonder just what he had done wrong. What do you mean there was a massive hole in your chest? The way she was looking at him showed it was an order and not a question. Naruto stared back at the two, not giving any emotion away, but he was surprised that the two were not aware of what happened to him yet. He was operating under the assumption that his sisters would have been in the loop of what had happened. The question he was thinking on was if he could trust them enough to share what he knew. He determined this would be their test. I will tell you what happened, but you have to promise me that whatever is said in this room will stay between us, no matter who asks you, even if it is Minato or Kushina. Naruto's blue eyes changed back to his Sharingan so he could detect any slight shift in any of their facial muscles that would be a sign of them planning on lying to him. What the Uchiha did not know was this was just the opportunity that his sisters were waiting for to prove themselves in the eyes of their brother. Without a moment of hesitation they nodded sternly, both staring right back into Naruto's eyes, unafraid, which made Naruto smirk. I was called on by the Hokage to become a recovery team meant to back up a team created by Shikamaru with the goal of retrieving Sasuke Uchiha, who had defected to join up with Orochimaru in Oto. I successfully recovered Choji and Neji before I teamed up with Shikamaru to defeat his opponent that Orochimaru had sent to ensure Sasuke's successful arrival. Naruto went on telling them the bare basics of what had happened on his mission, earning him two nods and then silence as they waited for the rest of the story. Naruto was pleasantly surprised that he was not to be interrupted. I managed to stop Sasuke at the border of Land of Rice Paddies and the Land of Fire, more commonly known as the Valley of the End. Even though I was running low on chakra, I managed to subdue Sasuke even with the aid of the curse mark given to him by that snake. However, I had an error in judgment and paid for it by taking a Chidori through the chest. Naruto spoke derisively while ridiculing himself for letting his guard down even with Itachi in the area. He did notice Naomi's hair seemingly breaking into 9 tendrils while Narumi's cold blue eyes reminded him of looking into a mirror. Naomi, being the more reactionary of the audience, quickly exploded in anger, all of which being directed at her former comrade who she had almost come to blows with on their last mission together. That bastard, what the fuck does he think he is doing? Next time I see him I am going to put him down, and painfully. That's a promise. Language. Naomi. Narumi chastised her sister even though she was still looking at Naruto equally angry and nodding in agreement with her sister's sentiment. Naruto smiled, since he never imagined even a year ago that his sisters could be so protective with him. It was an odd feeling, but he knew that it felt nice. Though I don't understand how the traitor could do that to you, since last time you two fought you defeated him easily. Naruto nodded slowly, since it would be confusing to compare their last battle and then expect that Naruto would be the one in the hospital almost dead. Sighing, Naruto ran his hand through his hair and knew he would reprimand himself for this for quite a while. It has to do with this error in judgment I spoke of earlier. You see, before I could secure Sasuke, someone made an appearance. Itachi Uchiha showed up and caught my weakened state in a genjutsu that allowed Sasuke to plunge his hand through my chest cavity. Naruto spoke, his eyes spinning as they resonated with the anger coursing through him. Why would an S-rank missing nin show up to save Sasuke unless he had a plan that involved Sasuke? Narumi asked aloud, looking out the window where Susei was still resting peacefully, which got an agreeable hum from her sister who had a similar thought. Naruto found no need to correct their assessment about the man he thought he knew. Here is the part that I need you to be completely silent about. I won't even be telling the council about this development. Do you understand? The intensity of Naruto's words brought both girls' attention back on them. Straightening up on instinct, both Narumi and Naomi nodded their heads. Returning the nod, Naruto closed his eyes and slowly opened them back up, showing his sisters his Mangekyo Sharingan. Both girls found themselves getting lost in the beauty of the deadly floral iris pattern Naruto's eyes now possessed. Naruto stared at them until they eventually broke free from the naturally hypnotic nature of his Sharingan. Sometime after Kushina brought me back to the hospital, I woke up in the middle of the night and pieced everything together, and the emotions I felt at the time awakened the second stage of the Sharingan Kekkei Genkai, the Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto spoke calmly while Narumi and Naomi nodded slowly, taking in this new information on the Uchiha since they had never seen such a thing while in the village. Wait, why aren't you going to tell anyone about your eyes? Naomi asked, not completely sure why he would want to hide something that made him so powerful, or at least look powerful to her. She thought it would make more sense to appear strong at all times, and the eyes she was looking at definitely looked powerful. These eyes are like gold to people who would like nothing more than to further themselves, such as the council. And to be honest, I have yet to discover what these eyes can do or even train them. I may have them, but they are not combat ready. Naruto said, letting his Mangekyo fade back to his natural azure-colored eyes. We understand, Naruto-kun, Ni-san. The pair of sisters said in perfect unison, which had Naruto smiling. He decided that he would trust his gut, and that same gut was telling him that he needed to trust his sisters on this occasion. If it blew up in his face, then he would deal with it, but something told him that it would not, this time. Naruto flashed them a brief smile before he looked back to the window, wondering if any more needed to be said right now, but in the end he decided that nothing more was needed, at least not at the moment. If you two could go out there and tell everyone that I am going back to bed, I'd appreciate it. I really don't feel like dealing with anyone else right now. You got in, Ni-san, but before that I think I'll take that hug you have been holding out on me. Naomi said, grinning, since she knew that in his weakened state there was no way Naruto would be able to resist. Yet it was still not to be, because Narumi quickly stood between the two, putting her palm against her sister's forehead, keeping her at arm's length. Oh no, you don't, Naomi-chan. You already managed to agitate his injury once, and I won't let you do it again. Naomi tried to give Narumi her puppy dog eyes, but it did nothing to sway her sister, so in the end she stomped off, grumbling about unfair siblings. Narumi gave herself mental congratulations before she turned around and gave Naruto's hand a soft squeeze and a smile before she too exited the room. Somewhere in the depths of Oto. Repeat what you just said. Orochimaru hissed out in fury from his seated position on a chair that looked very much like a stone throne. His yellow eyes glared down at his faithful servant, who would not even dare to meet gazes with the legendary Snake Sannin. The furious snake summoner was just informed as to the results of his mission to recover what was to be his next vessel, and better yet, it had the Sharingan. If he was able to use his arms, which meant access to his hands, he would surely be gripping the arms of his chair in effort to cope with his anger. I apologize, Orochimaru-sama, but by the time I arrived on the scene the area was void of any presences. The only things left were signs of a struggle and a rather large amount of blood, which I couldn't place to a person since my knowledge is not in that field. Kimimaro said meekly as he tried to say anything that would not anger his master further. He wouldn't even think about removing his eyes from the floor at his feet. He was angry with himself over the failure since his master needed him and he failed, but he knew he could make things right before his body gave out on him. That's what I thought you said, Kimimaro-kun. Orochimaru said in a pseudo-calm voice that even made Kabuto, who was standing at his right side, feel a sense of dread, and he wasn't even the one who was on the end of the legendary shinobi's ire. Kabuto tried to remain passive as his eyes flicked from the last Kagaya to his master, all the while trying to figure out what they could do to try and retrieve the Uchiha from wherever he was. The S-rank shinobi opened his mouth and dislocated his jaw, allowing his elongated tongue to slowly slither out of his opened mouth. The long appendage was wrapped around the handle of a beautiful blade that was said to be able to cut anything, the kusanagi. Before anyone in the room could even blink, the sword was being driven through the heart of Kimimaro, who never saw it coming due to his eyes being plastered to the ground. Kabuto watched on without any sign of surprise since Kimimaro failed, thus he became expendable. The only sound in the room was that of the Kagaya's blood dripping on the floor in a constant melody. Drip. Drip. Clicking his teeth around his tongue, Orochimaru pulled his sword out of the corpse and with a quick flourish the snake-like man splattered the blood on the steel onto the ground where it would be cleaned up later. A disappointed frown made its way to the face of the normally smiling Sannin, even if it was a sinister smile. The Sannin lowered his blade to rest it against the side of this throne since now his plans had to be changed around. Kabuto-kun, I want you to go and retrieve Gurren so that we may move on with the changeover. The cells from young Yukimaru-kun have completely ruined my arms, it seems like we haven't enough knowledge of how his power works. Pick up a few more cadavers so that we may continue to test with his cells. Kabuto pushed up his glasses, getting them to gleam ominously for a moment before a creepy smile crossed the bespectacled medic's face. He never liked that Gurren woman, and now she would finally serve a purpose instead of simply annoying him. It will be done, master. Kabuto assured the man on the throne before looking back down at Kabuto's body. Shall I store away Kimimaro-kun's body for later examination? Looking down at the body of his former subordinate, Orochimaru nodded, since even dead bodies could provide invaluable resources that other people would find inscrutable while he saw opportunity. Kabuto bowed one last time before he took the corpse and vanished in a shunshin, taking Kimimaro with him, leaving Orochimaru alone with his thoughts. If I can make proper use of young Yukimaru-kun's gift to interact with the Sanbi, I can easily make myself a Jinchuriki. Kukuku. Then I will be able to not only destroy Konoha with my amassed power, but then I can turn my wake of destruction on my former colleagues in the Akatsuki and their leader. With the Sanbi and Edo Tensei at my beck and call, I will be invincible. Orochimaru's disturbing laughter echoed of the barren stone walls of his underground hideout and research bunker. It is a shame that I won't be able to use that old fool Danzo to further my own plans like I would have normally. There is no way that old tool would willingly hand me something as powerful as a tailed beast. That's okay though, because whatever that war hawk gets involved in usually fails, and miserably. Once again Orochimaru started to laugh as he imagined the shocked expression on not only Danzo's face but all of Konoha's when he crashed into Konoha with the power of his zombies and the strength of a Biju behind him. Then, just like he had imagined back when Minato was chosen as Hokage over him, Konoha would be nothing more than a large pile of ash waiting to be scattered in the winds of war. Patience always pays off, but not quite as nicely as being prepared does. For all of this to work, I need to complete the seal that will allow me to incorporate the power of the three-tailed turtle. Orochimaru told himself as he got up from his throne and made his way towards his private study where the seal was awaiting his attention. Let it be known that Jiraiya was not the only Sannin who could excel in the field of Fuinjutsu. Orochimaru, while favoring ninjutsu, would be a fool to overlook the sheer amount of possibilities that Fuinjutsu could provide. He was a man known for many things that were mostly terrible, and the few good deeds were long since buried under the uproar created by his human experimentation. He was a man known as a Sannin. He belonged to a group of shinobi who were all S-ranked and were now feared as the Akatsuki. There was one title that he had not obtained yet, and that would be the one that he cherished the most when it finally became a reality. He would be forever known as the Bane of Konohagakure. Konoha. Council Chambers. Now that all of the civilian matters have been discussed and moved on from, I believe that it is time to address the mission to recover one Sasuke Uchiha, something we had put off until the Uzumaki clan head was out of the hospital so we could hear his first-hand report. Homura began, looking towards the seated Naruto from behind his glasses. His statement earned him a nod from his fellow advisor while everyone else waited patiently for Naruto began. The raven-haired Uzumaki sat back in his chair with his eyes closed as the rest of the room waited on in a growing suspense. Internally Naruto sighed since he really found passive, open-ended statements to be a waste of time, but in this instance Naruto would oblige them so he could be out of their presences even faster. I was called into the office of the Hokage where I was informed that I would be backing up a team already sent to recover Sasuke Uchiha. I had two goals to complete. The first was to recover any injured comrades, which I did. Both Hiashi and Choza nodded their heads, happy to have their clanmates back safe and sound. After a few battles with Orochimaru's Sound Guard, which were nothing more than cleanup, I cornered Sasuke in the Valley of the End. He wanted to test the power he received from Orochimaru and willingly engaged me in battle. I was able to defeat Sasuke in that battle. Naruto said, staring straight ahead but not at anything specifically as he remembered the conclusion of his encounter. A few of the counselors looked at each other confused as to how Naruto could claim that he was victorious when he ended up hospitalized and how they assumed Sasuke was currently in the clutches of the snake Sannin. Makoto was particularly torn at the moment, wondering just what she should feel. Kushina interjected here, wanting one of her own curiosities sated, something her son could hopefully provide. Can you explain that foul chakra that was in the area when I came into the valley? Naruto's blue eyes panned over towards the female Uzumaki, his facial expression showing no signs of worry that she may have found out that he had access to the chakra of the Kyuubi. Yes, there was an evil chakra in the air. It came from Sasuke, who using his anger was granted access to what appeared to be the second stage of the curse mark. That is what I believe to be the source of that foul chakra. Kushina looked into her son's calm countenance and nodded slowly, although internally she still had her doubts. What Naruto said may have been true, but as the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi for so many years, she knew what the fox's chakra felt like. She knew it wasn't from Naomi or Narumi because they were with Minato at the time, so that only left Naruto, but he couldn't have access to that part of the Kyuubi. Both she and Minato were sure that they left Naruto with the soul of the beast. Uzumaki-san, you said that you defeated Sasuke. May I ask how it is that things ended like they did if you had actually beaten Sasuke? Shibi asked stoically from his position at the council table. With his body mostly covered up, it was hard to tell what the Aburame clan head was feeling, but it could be assumed that it was disbelief. The state I was left in when Kushina arrived on the scene was the result of an unforeseeable factor, causing me to be struck by a Chidori, one that apparently just missed my heart. Naruto said aloud, looking up at the ceiling where he knew there were any number of Anbu were probably stationed, since this was where every high-priority target in Konoha was currently located. Though Naruto did not state it explicitly, all of the shinobi in the room were seasoned veterans and knew what his words meant. What Naruto really said was that there was a third party involved, and it was someone that he personally didn't expect to be there, which meant Orochimaru and Oda were out of the discussion. Who or what was this person that created just havoc on your operation? Naruto looked over to Danzo, who was squinting at the young clan head, currently fuming over the loss of yet another pair of Sharingan. Naruto blinked once and then uttered two words that had everyone in the room tense. Itachi Uchiha. The atmosphere in the room became very tense as every person in the room tried to formulate some kind of logical conclusion. The most desperate to do so was Makoto, who couldn't believe that Itachi would allow Sasuke to seriously harm Naruto, but one look at the teen and she knew that Naruto believed otherwise. That alone left her conflicted on what she should believe and, more importantly, feel. Ignoring the heavy atmosphere, Naruto continued on as the others tried to form their own uninformed opinions. His blue eyes changed to his Sharingan as just thinking about what happened innately triggered such a response. I was running low on chakra, thus unable to maintain my Sharingan, and as such Itachi was easily able to trap me in a genjutsu. While I was immobilized, Sasuke stuck me with a Chidori. I blacked out quickly after that and woke up here in Konoha in the hospital, so I too am unaware as to Sasuke's location. Naruto's honest account of what he knew had Homura and Koharu sighing, since they had hoped that the Uzumaki could shed some light on what had happened. It was true that he had answered some questions, but they could still use some more information. That's when the council members in the room all looked to the wall behind the Hokage, where Jiraiya stepped out from with his arms crossed and a frown on his face. From what I gathered from my contacts, Orochimaru hasn't shown any recent activity in the bases that we know, or somewhere in the land of rice paddies. That could be a good thing or a bad thing. A good thing because it means my teammate probably doesn't have the Uchiha brat, and a bad thing because that means someone else does and we don't know who for sure. Jiraiya's conclusions brought deeper frowns onto the faces of a few of the counselors, because no matter how one viewed the subject, Konoha lost a valuable asset. Asuma, who had been listening silently until this point, sighed, finding this whole thing to be one large mess. He could totally see why his father had passed this duty down to him, because it was extremely taxing. If only his brother was still alive to be pawned off with this, but at least the traitor who had murdered him was now gone from this earth. Well, what do we do about Sasuke then? Minato closed his eyes for a moment as he thought about what were the options they had and then what was the correct path to take. Furrowing his brow, the yellow flash finally came to his choice, the choice Konoha would follow. We cannot put Sasuke in the bingo book. He is still too young and doing such will make us appear incompetent, so until we reassess the situation we will look for Sasuke Uchiha in secret. With that, Minato dismissed the council for this session and Naruto quickly exited the room, not wanting to be stuck around for any political maneuvering that may occur afterwards, but much to Naruto's irritation he could not use the Shunshin, so he was relegated to walking back to his apartment just like a civilian. Opening the door and walking into his home, Naruto was greeted by the sight of Fu doing some stretches which gave him quite the view of her rear. He coughed, hoping to get her attention. Fu blinked and immediately turned around, staring in at Naruto in embarrassment, being caught in such a compromising position. The only thing that made her feel slightly better was the fact that Naruto was also blushing at what had just inadvertently happened. Fu quickly recovered and walked over to Naruto, being careful not to touch him just in case he still had an injury she wasn't aware of. Smiling at the sight of her first friend in Konoha and maybe the entire world, Fu rocked back on her heels. How are you feeling, Naruto-kun? I was going to come and visit you, but I wasn't sure how the villagers would react to me if they figured out what I held, so I decided to just wait. Fu admitted with a sad shrug that visibly brightened when she made it clear that she really would rather talk about her question than the statement. Naruto would have loved to tell his fellow Jinchuriki that she could just scare the life right out of the civilians if they said anything, but he held his tongue, seeing she'd rather talk about something else. Naruto motioned for the two to take a seat, which Fu nodded to and sat down next to her friend so they could talk. I feel just wonderful, considering that I will basically be on lockdown here in the village until my arm gets better. Her orange eyes blinked as they looked at Naruto's arm much more intently before she poked his bicep a few times with her cocked to the side, clearly confused. Naruto looked at her confusion with no small amount of amusement. Something is wrong with your arm. Are you sure? Because it looks fine to me. Apparently the nerves and the muscles in the arm need to be reworked so they can perform at 100%, so I am going to be going through physical therapy here in the village. Naruto said, sighing despondently as he thought about all the time he would have to spend around the citizens and their mutual dislike for each other. Fu laughed at the expression that Naruto was giving her while adding in a patronizing pat on the shoulder that only made Naruto feel worse about the whole thing, only fueling her amusement. Good, that means you can spend more time hanging out with me. I can finally get a full tour of the famous Konohagakure. I mean, Hinata only shows me some places before she gets called off to either due missions or clan duties. Oh, don't you worry, Fu-chan, sooner rather than later your probation period will be up and you'll be doing so many missions that your head will spin. Naruto fired back with a vulpine grin, making Fu sigh sadly since she kind of liked the free lifestyle she was currently enjoying. Naruto was glad to hear that Fu was getting out and about instead of dwelling in his apartment like a cave bear. Fu's disgruntled expression quickly changed to a mischievous one as she giggled internally at how perfectly Naruto had chosen his words. Putting on the most innocent expression that she could muster to hide her devilish intentions, Fu looked at Naruto innocently, making him gulp internally. Since I am not working, that means you will pay for my meals, right, Naruto-kun? I mean, you are quite the gentleman after all. To top everything off, she gave the shocked Uchiha a smile full of admiration that made it impossible for Naruto to deny her. Fine. The Uzumaki clan head mumbled, looking extremely downcast, a look that could only be compared to one who had just lost their puppy. It was quite the sight to anyone who had seen Naruto before in the public setting, because they would never had thought these two could be the same person. The mint-haired former Taki nin completely ignored Naruto's sudden depression and rushed for the door with a bright smile on her tanned face. Yay! Ichiraku time. Fu did not notice Naruto's expression get even worse when she said that because he knew he'd get an earful from a Yame who he hadn't seen in a while. He just knew this was going to be one painful experience both for his wallet and for his head when a Yame smacked him with a frying pan. Konoha. Uchiha compound. Naruto sat there by himself in the library of the Uchiha compound, surrounded by a series of books, all of which had to do with information on the Mangekyo Sharingan. He was surprised that when he showed up that Makoto was not present, but he guessed that she too had responsibilities she had to take care of, so Naruto let himself in, knowing she wouldn't mind him doing so. He was surprised to see so much information on the evolved cursed eye, but maybe they were more common back then. Different times bred different situations, or so Naruto would think. A part of Naruto was glad that his surrogate mother was currently absent because he wasn't quite sure what to feel about her considering what had just happened between he and Itachi. It was that lack of certainty that would have had the young Uchiha hide his new eyes from Makoto just on the off chance she would stab him in the back like both her sons, one literally and the other metaphorically. Shaking his head, Naruto activated his Mangekyo Sharingan and picked up the book on the top of the stack. He figured there wouldn't be any better place to start of his search. The basics of the Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto smiled reading the title of the book, seeing this was just what he needed since Itachi never told him anything about his own Mangekyo. But what Naruto found to be the most interesting was that the book was penned by Madara Uchiha. Figuring he wouldn't find any more reliable information on the eye anywhere else, Naruto began to read, skimming through and eventually finding what it was he was looking for. He began to read. I have recently awoken what myself and my kinsmen have named the Mangekyo Sharingan, which to have I deciphered as the second stage of the Sharingan's development. After a few days I have come to realize that these eyes came to be because I underwent a period of extreme emotional distress. While I have yet to discover what these eyes can do, I do know that I have never felt more powerful than I do now. With this strength I will surely be able to defeat Hashirama when we next come to blows. Naruto left the book opened up to that page before he slid the book over to his left so that he could search for a book he had saw earlier while he was collecting everything. Tabbing his thumb against the spines of the book, Naruto stopped with a smile when he found the piece of literature that he was searching for. The book was titled A Catalogue of Known Mangekyo Sharingan Abilities. Opening up the book, Naruto proceeded to look over all of the abilities the Mangekyo was able to perform, but he did note that it said only certain eyes could do certain things, which meant he may have one or more of these abilities if he could have none of them. Amaterasu. The jet black flames of the Amaterasu, said to be the fires from hell, and as hot as the sun, ignite at the focus of the user's vision. These flames are unavoidable and will continue to burn for as long as the object they are attached to continues to exist. It is currently unknown if the flames can be manipulated. However, the stress of this technique will cause the user's eye to bleed. Users. Itachi Uchiha. Koto Amatsukami. The ability to cast a subtle but very powerful mind-controlling genjutsu on a target. The technique allows the user to enter their opponent's mind and manipulate them by giving them false experiences, making it seem as if they were doing things of their own free will, making them completely unaware they were being controlled. It does require a time period before it is capable of being used again. Users. Shisui Uchiha. Susanoo. A humanoid being that surrounds the user and fights on their behalf. As one of the strongest techniques granted to those that have acquired the Mangekyo Sharingan, it acts as the user's guardian deity. Users. Madara Uchiha. Izuna Uchiha. Itachi Uchiha. Shisui Uchiha. Tsukuyomi. A very powerful genjutsu that could be considered the strongest to exist, where the user brings out the spiritual world of darkness. To be performed, Tsukuyomi requires eye contact, which allows the user to completely control anything in the world, including time. The target of the genjutsu is exposed to severe amounts of mental trauma that could lead to a coma if the time in the world is extensive. Users. Itachi Uchiha. Note smiley face. While not Mangekyo abilities, it is suggested to look up the Izanami and the Izanagi. Naruto smiled at all the information that he had, and there was only more to be read, but before Naruto completely immersed himself, the raven-haired son of the Hokage had to make sure there was no sign that he was here in the first place. Sealing up a few of the books that he wanted to hold on to for the time, Naruto quickly put back everything else before hurriedly leaving the compound, wondering just what these eyes of his could do. Reading about all the other eyes only made that need to know much stronger. Naruto knew that he needed to play his cards right so that he could take the next opportunity presented to him so that he could train his new eyes under the guise of secrecy. To do so, he needed to escape from the eyes and confines of the village. He had the eyes created from a time of chaos, and he would not be blind. No, he would make sure that he saw everything and not in the traditional black and white that the current shinobi system was comfortable with. No, he would change his future, and his Mangekyo Sharingan would help him do it. Konohagakure. Okay Naruto, why not try and throw a punch to see how far your strength has come since we started the strength exercises a few weeks ago. Shizune said with a kind but serious look on her face that showed she wasn't taking it easy in making sure the Hokage's son was ready to get back in the flow of what it meant to be a chunin of the village hidden in the leaves. It was something that Naruto noticed and had him respecting the medic Nin more than he had before he became her patient. He had already respected her ability, but now he respected her character and work ethic in making sure he was ready no matter what his name was. Hell, he was a clan head and she still told him no when he was being particularly stubborn. Taking a deep breath, Naruto nodded and lowered himself into the Uchiha-based interceptor fist style of taijutsu. Eyes alive with his standard Sharingan, Naruto launched himself at Shizune using his average speed of movement with his arm ready to deliver a blow. Shizune, who had instructed him to move at a moderate speed, was easily able to take the blow with her palm, but there was a solid thud and Shizune slid back a few yards and was forced to shake her arms of the tingling feeling that was coursing through her arms. The result of the attack caused the first apprentice of Tsunade the Sannin to smile. It seems like you are getting some of your natural strength back. But in saying that, we still have to get you back into combat shape now. You won't be of any use to anyone if you get tired after 3 minutes in battle, so get ready Naruto, here I come. With a small smirk, Shizune fired a hail of Senbon from a launcher hidden in her loose hanging sleeves. The raven-haired Uzumaki's Sharingan red eyes widened slightly. His Kekkei Genkai allowed him to track the path of the thin ninja tools. Having just come out of the stance he needed to adopt so he could dodge, he batted in a fist just to the left of his head. Eyes of Kunoichi and Shinobi locking, Naruto gave his physical trainer a small smirk. Your skills as a Junin have been well earned, Shizune, that much I can see. Sharingan Genjutsu. Najire. Copy wheel eye illusion. Distortion. Naruto muttered, making effective use of his blessed eyes to put Shizune under a subtle genjutsu that would affect depth perception and put a sluggish aura around her. Shizune, however, was extremely perceptive, a skill honed through medical training, and quickly bit the inside of her lip and dispelled the jutsu through pain, which was a surefire way to escape most illusionary arts. When Shizune planted her foot on Naruto's chest and kicked him away to provide some space between them, Naruto frowned at the failure of his jutsu. He wasn't sure if it was rust or Shizune was that good, and for the sake of his ego the Uchiha decided on it being the latter. Physical activity is all good and well, but let us see if I can keep up with the jutsu, something that all Uzumaki have the gift of using at will. The raven-haired clan head said in his thoughts while going through the seals for a jutsu. Once the young Chunin finished with the last seal, Naruto lifted his fingers to his lips and fired the chakra building in his lungs. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu. Fire release. Grand fireball technique. A blazing ball of flames spread from his lips and grew in size just before engulfing the space that Shizune was occupying. Naruto did not bother to allow himself the time to fret over his rehabilitation teacher, since he saw the quick substitution she used to escape being baked alive, and from the very back peripheral of his vision he could see a flare of chakra, and acting on instinct to survive he ducked just as Shizune's hand came cutting through the space he just vacated. His eyes narrowed slightly when he saw one of the few techniques that the most skilled of medics learn to defend themselves. He was slightly alarmed when he saw a few locks of his hair were shaved away, showing him that her close was much closer to hitting than he first thought. Those attacks can cut things. That is not good because it works perfectly with her extensive knowledge of the human anatomy. One blow could spell the end of me, though I doubt she even has those thoughts. Mistakes can still happen. Naruto grimaced a bit when his sudden drop down put some jarring pressure on his still recovering arm. Although it wasn't much, it was still enough that it provided him with some mental discomfort. Naruto was forced to backpedal as Shizune continued to aim for debilitating blows that she could eventually help, despite knowing that the raven-haired shinobi had no desire to take a blow. Naruto continued to back up, dodging the strikes thrown at him, but what annoyed him to no end was that he could not parry the blows because of how much of her hands and partially her wrists were being covered by the chakra scalpels. Catching the glimpse of a tree approaching from behind him, the Uzumaki clan head rolled to the left at the last moment, causing Shizune's hand to catch the tree and for her to curse internally. Almost had him. But it is good that he is able to move so nimbly. Shizune kept to her thoughts, showing she hadn't completely fallen into the swing of the battle. Those hands of yours can give life and take life. I wonder why people call the Hyuga dangerous if any capable medic like yourself can do such damage. How scary. Naruto said to himself, but loud enough so that Shizune could hear his complimentary words. Shizune for her part let a light blush spread over her cheeks, since she was rarely complimented on her skills, which may seem ridiculous since she was the apprentice of the Slug Queen Tsunade Senju. Fighting back her blush, Shizune then dropped back into a readied stance, unperturbed by Naruto's ever-watchful Sharingan eye. Her confidence was almost palpable, a confidence built through skills and having the utmost faith in those same tools. Those are very kind words, Naruto, but flattery won't be getting you anywhere. Now then, get your guard ready because here I come. Ichiraku ramen, Konoha. There were two composed sounds of people eating food and a slightly more frantic, unrefined source of slurping coming from between the two more civilized people. Behind the counter were the smiling faces of the father-daughter combination of Ichirakus, the fine ramen providers of Konohagakure no Sato. I know how much you love our ramen and I do appreciate it, Naomi-chan, but maybe you should take a moment and take a deep breath so you don't suffocate on ramen. The daughter of the duo, Ayame said with a good-natured smile and a slight, teasing jab aimed at the energetic daughter of the Hokage. Ayame is right, Naomi-chan, you need to breath or else you will choke yourself out on the noodles. A message saying how the daughter of the Hokage passed out eating Ichiraku won't do them any good. They might even have to close down if something like that was to happen. The blonde-haired Kunoichi said, though it sounded more like an idle thought that she just so happened to think about at the moment than a threat. There was also a small smirk that she wore when the blonde heard the struggled, muffled protests from her red-headed sister, which she chuckled at, enjoying how predictable her sister could be. Moving herself back up into a standard sitting position instead of the slightly hunched one she was using to eat her ramen, Naomi slammed her fist against her chest in an effort to help the noodles go down. Naomi took in a deep breath before turning and leveling her sister with glare of betrayal for the words she had chosen. One would think that her sister had just physically struck her from the look that she was giving off. Oni-chan, you should never say anything like that ever. Not even if you are joking. Ka-san would never let it happen anyway, so ha. Naruto, who was sitting on the left of Naomi, ignored the small bickering competition that was going on between his sisters, but there was a small smile pulling at the corners of his lips. If someone would have told him a few months ago that he would be doing this very thing, he would have laughed in their face, and he was plenty sure it would be a dry, mocking one too. I guess Hiruzen Gigi was right when he said that I was growing up. The younger me would never be doing something like this with them. It feels nice, to be honest. His thoughts revolved around him being able to let go the hatred that was constantly lingering over him like a dark cloud that would shadow his life. Yet there was something that he missed despite being so mature for his age. There was something even Naruto could see. He couldn't see that his hatred, his darkness, was simply moved to another target or targets. Naruto was so far in his own thoughts that he had failed to notice that the damp ends of his chopsticks hit the end of his bowl. He was only free from his mind when he heard the empty dink of the sticks hitting the porcelain bowl. Naruto looked up for a moment and saw that Yuki was smiling at him, seemingly have already noticed. Would you like a second bowl, Naruto? Naruto looked up to the elder, kind man for a moment before his azure eyes shifted towards his sisters, who seemed to be on the final stretch of their argument that they were holding. His eyes shifted back to the ramen provided and he gave a gentle nod that Yuki seemed to be expecting, since he was quick on taking the bowl and moving back towards the kitchen area of the small ramen stand. Naruto wasn't the only one who seemed to notice the elder chef's departure, because when he glanced to the left he could see Naomi giving him a cheeky grin that almost made him want to groan. A second bowl, Ni-san? You almost never have seconds. I knew you were starting like us and don't even try to deny it. Naomi cheered with a victorious grin that made Narumi giggle from behind her, since she could see the slightly annoyed expression that was forming on her wayward brother's face. Before Naomi could gloat further on the change in Naruto's heart, she was forced to yelp and nurse the slight red spot on her forehead before sending a pouting look to a smirking Naruto whose hand was holding his chopsticks and slowly being lowered back to a resting position. Satisfied that he had put down the slight ego boost that Naomi was getting, Naruto turned his eyes back to Narumi, who was laughing at her sister's misfortune, getting her to stop laughing in case Naruto turned his strange form of behavior correction on her. Giving her an approving nod, Naruto then looked back to Tsuki, who had just placed his bowl down before leaving before Naruto could thank him, getting the raven-haired male to quirk an eyebrow. He looked back to his sisters while waiting for his ramen to cool. I am only having a second bowl because Shizune is a slave driver when it comes to her duties in the hospital, nothing more or less. Something in Narumi's sky-blue eyes seemed to click with the wave of realization when she glanced back to her brother, which Naruto noticed and waited for her to tell him whatever it was she had floating in the forefront of her mind. Naruto-kun, I am supposed to let you know that Hokage-sama wants you to come to his office in 2 days for some kind of meeting that we are to attend. Narumi spoke calmly while also using the title of Hokage so that she could maintain a level of professionalism and increase the chances that Naruto would attend the meeting. Both she and Naomi watched in building anticipation as Naruto seemed to be ignoring them in favor of his bowl of food. After one last spooled-up mouthful of noodles, Naruto patted at his lips with a napkin before humming and looking ahead, but at nothing really in particular. A few silent moments later, Naruto shifted his eyes and looked at his sisters, only now his eyes were alive with the Kekkei Genkai of the Uchiha, the Sharingan. Naruto simply stared at the two, wondering if they had given away his secrets to Minato, Kushina, or any number of people that would love to know about it. As that's so. It seems that the Hokage requires his children to come to him, but should I give him a refusal as a clan head or no? Naomi and Narumi frowned slightly, but before either could offer some form of retort to try and convince Naruto, he had vanished in swirl of black crow feathers, leaving a half-finished bowl of ramen as the only sign that he was there in the first place. The sisters let go of tired sighs in stereo when they realized Naruto was not going to be able to treat their father like he was willing to treat them. Naomi pushed away her empty fourth bowl, no longer finding her body capable of wanting to eat more, appetite gone. Mumbling incoherently for a few moments, the redhead eventually turned her head, staring inquisitively at her sister with sad, violet irises. Do you think that we will be able to convince Ni-san to come on the training trip with us? Naomi asked quietly while glancing back to the seat that Naruto was just using, right beside her, a feeling that was now worlds apart from what she was feeling now. I don't know, Naomi-chan, but if there is one thing that I know, it is that Naruto-kun is very independent and won't be forced to do something that isn't part of his own plan. His will is as strong as any one person I know. Only time will tell. Narumi said with the same kind of frown as she offered her own insight on the enigma that was their brother. She was just as disappointed as her sister, but she would wait until the meeting before she made comments, since her brother was anything but predictable. 2 days later, Konoha. Naruto stood there with his Sharingan burning and the 3 tomo in his eyes rotating with a frightening intensity, considering he was only shifting his gaze from the tree a few feet away and his blade twilight that he was holding secure with his left hand before swapping it over to his right. It was a skill that Mihawk hammered into his muscle memory, saying that a swordsman with tendencies was a dead man, which always had Naruto snort out a laugh at how his sensei always wielded his black blade in one way. But when you are as skilled and as dangerous as Mihawk sensei is, I suppose you do what makes you the best. It was the thoughts of his sensei that brought a rather prominent frown to the raven-haired Uzumaki's lips. Thanks to his rehab sessions and time off, he couldn't get in any form of swordplay, and now Twilight felt like a foreign presence rather than an extension of himself. Such a thing was unacceptable for any kind of swordsman, down from the most average of blade wielders to the legends. Fingers clenching with more force around the hilt of his tricolored katana, Naruto closed his eyes and crouched low to the ground. Shoulders rising as he took in one last inhale, then he vanished. It was only a moment later before the tree that was in the center of Naruto's vision was marked by 3 clean, passing slashes, and another moment after that before the once tall tree fell to the ground in the varying portions that caused quite the loud impact, and nearby forest animals to flee in an effort to preserve themselves. It was another second before Naruto would reappear seemingly from the air himself in what was a perfect body flicker. Not quite as fast as Shisui, but the tips he left for him all those years ago sure showed when there was no signs Naruto used a shunshin. The Uzumaki clan head clicked his teeth in annoyance when he caught sight that it took a trifecta of cuts to dismantle the tree when his previous record was 2 aiming for a single cut. Sighing, the shinobi calmed himself and turned around just in time to find another presence standing in the impromptu clearing, regarding him from behind the porcelain mask over their face. The purple hair, however, was more than enough to demolish the anonymity of what the mask was supposed to provide. It was Neko, of course, an attempt to tug at some form of heartstrings for the woman who would help him out back in his helpless days. Neko. Naruto spoke in a calm voice that was void of any form of emotion apart from a sense of civility. It was something he forced himself to learn right before announcing that he was to be the Uzumaki clan head. A stern tone would make any plans he might or might not have all the more difficult to implement if he was to alienate himself amongst his peers, and too soft of a tone would let people think he could be walked over. The Anbu with the mask and the codename Nako gave a slight dip of her head that caused her long, purple hair to move with the flow of her motions. It was standard Anbu protocol to respect those of the council, which Naruto certainly was. Perhaps if she was off duty she'd use his name, but that was neither here nor there. Uzumaki-sama, the Hokage, has requested that you report to his office immediately. Thank you for informing me, Nako. Naruto replied calmly, but despite what he said, it was clear that the Chunin was not at all considering what was spoken and instead was looking to continue on deeper into the forest where he could continue training, hopefully undisturbed. However, before he could move any further, Nako once again appeared in front of him, ending any forward progress. I am afraid that Hokage-sama made sure that I expressed to you that this meeting is urgent and that if you are not willing to comply I will have to use force. Naruto of course sighed softly when she said that. He was not foolish enough to believe that he would pose much of a challenge to Anbu-level Kunoichi in his current state. Silently he took his eyes from the woman before him and guided them north to the sky, where the red eyes faded back to their natural blue shade. Upon his reluctant nod, both ninja vanished within the respective shunshuns. A minute or so later, both shinobi appeared in the center of the Hokage's office, with only Naruto remaining in place while Nako went and took back to her post, hidden in the shadows and ready to protect her cage. Not at all concerned but definitely intrigued, Naruto glanced over his shoulder to see his sisters and mother standing, and in front of him was his father and his teacher. I do wonder where this will go. Clearing his throat, the Yondaime Hokage was the first to speak when his blue eyes leveled on his son, who remained still with a look of clear detachment. Naruto, there is something very serious we thought that we should include you in now that you have proven yourself to the village. Then there is how this affects the state of this political climate, the fragile peace. The truth be told, it was that he never trusted Naruto with the information on the Akatsuki, something they were unaware that Naruto already knew about. Everyone in the room looked at Naruto wondering how he would react, but when they were greeted by nothing but a stony-faced stoicism, they were not at all surprised. Growing even more anxious by the silence and the importance of the news that had yet to be delivered, the famed Toad Sage continued on for his most prodigal student, with all intent on drilling the gravity of the situation into the wayward son's stubborn head. Naruto, you don't know this, but somewhere out there a group of S-rank criminals are amassing assets and connections in preparation to gather the nine-tailed beasts. They call themselves the Akatsuki. Right now we know of 3 members. Deidara, an explosive release user formerly of Iwagakure; Kisame Hoshigaki, a man infamously known as the Monster of the Hidden Mist, wanted for the murder of his predecessor to take the blade Samahata. And finally we have Kurento, also from the Hidden Mist, and was known to be called the 8 Swordsman of the Hidden Mist before leaving the village upon Mai Terumi's appointment and leaving a trail of dead Anbu on the way out. Naturally growing anxious from hearing of the threat that 2 of her daughters were facing, Kushina couldn't help but burst into the conversation. Her hopes for this meeting was to make her son even stronger than he was now, so that both she and Minato could rest at night better knowing that there was yet another powerful shinobi there to protect Narumi or Naomi from the threat of Red Dawn. That's why we want you to come with me, Naomi-chan, Narumi-chan, and the perv to Uzu, where we'll teach you more about your Uzumaki blood. Ignoring how the aforementioned pervert stumbled behind the Hokage before managing to regain himself just before unceremoniously hitting the ground, Naruto breathed out a simple, one-word answer. No. What do you mean no? This is no time for you to hold onto that stubborn grudge of yours, kid. These shinobi are no joke, and if you continue to refuse our aid, not only will your sisters lose the Kyuubi, but the entire world will be in danger, so open your eyes. Now the first time that the black-haired teen refused to be trained by him, Jiraiya was peeved, but now he was more than agitated that Naruto would still not let go of his hate when things like the world were at stake. He didn't have time to appease an upset child. My answer is what it means, but if you must know why a certain crow in the Uchiha clan decided to pay me a visit during my mission with the Fuma Weasels. I learned of the Akatsuki and the basics of their delusional plan to try and control the Biju. Naruto said calmly, like he was not dropping hints about his former teacher and brother figure meeting with him. Not that they knew that Itachi taught him or actually met him during his fight with Sasuke, but Naruto just chalked that up to them not needing to know. Watching the signs of realization forming on the faces of the 2 legendary shinobi in front of him, Naruto continued on with his small, informative speaking session in hope that these bits and pieces of information would keep them from bothering him too much. Because of this, I have already taken steps to do the training that I need to undertake to prepare myself. From behind his desk, the blonde Hokage could feel something growing in his gut. Not wanting to call it dread because the word didn't fit, he just narrowed his eyes slightly on Naruto, whose lips started to twitch. Naruto, what are you planning? Minato all but demanded to know what was running through his son's mind. Mirthless smile firmly painted onto his lips. Naruto rolled his neck, causing his eyes to close momentarily before they slid back open, revealing his standard Sharingan eyes, the smile still in play. I am training these eyes and the secrets of them that even I am unaware of, but to do that I needed to find somewhere special. Naruto would pause there and shift his eyes to gaze out the window in front of him, past the two shinobi in front of him. Actually, the real Naruto should be there now. No need for me to hang around anymore. And without so much as another word, the teen standing there went up in smoke, signaling a shadow clone. The room stared at the spot that Naruto, or his shadow clone, was standing just a second ago, with varying degrees of disbelief on their faces, not quite believing that they couldn't tell that they were talking to a shadow clone, even though it was next to impossible to distinguish the difference between the original and the clone. A few moments of silence later, Kushina took her two daughters and moved to prepare for a trip to their ancestral homeland, while Minato turned to look at his sensei with a serious expression in play on his sharp features. Knowing his student like the back of his own dirty hand, the white-haired pervert showed a moment of rare seriousness and gave a slight nod before crossing his arms over his broad chest, a frown lightly in place. I'll have my spy network try and dig up signs of where he may have gone, but I doubt it will help if he had time to think of a plan. He wouldn't not count for my spy network if he didn't want to be found. Jiraiya made sure to warn his pupil before his hopes got too high. Rotating in his chair just as his teacher made use of his favorite exit, the window, Minato knew that he was right, but still couldn't help but hope that somewhere in Naruto's soul, heart, or conscience that he would accept and join up with the rest of his family. Before he could delve any further into the subject, the door to his office opened and the Hokage was forced to school his features as he came face to face with the darkness of Shinobi, Danzo Shimura. Flashback end. Yes, that was all flashback. Get ready for current times. The sound of wind breaking around the constant flapping of what sounded like wings was the first thing that a sleeping Naruto Uchiha awoke to. Groaning slightly still, tired from yet another night of almost endless training, the teenager was clearly fighting against the urge to fall back asleep, but soon enough a loud cong sound started to fill his ears. As loud as any blaring alarm clock, the Uzumaki clan head sat up stiffly, his movements a bit sluggish, but yet the shinobi's eyes remained closed, like he was hesitant to find what kind of light or freight would greet him on the other side. Eventually his eyes would draw open, and from behind those eyelids came to be exposed two black pools with a red, ocular rose pattern, with each petal curved to appear as a blade of a scythe, all through natural evolution. The unique design of Naruto's Mangekyo Sharingan would have pierced through all that he looked to, but here there was no fear, only acceptance from that who awoke him. Hearing the same ka once more, Naruto nodded in complete and total understanding to what would be incoherent nonsense to others. Swinging his legs from the makeshift bed he had created, the raven-haired crow summoner would move to put on his clothing for the day. The ones he wore to bed were scuffed and cut from training and needed to be replaced. Opening the dresser that once again had to be carved from wood during his stay in Kurohane Forest, and with good reason, seeing that crows had no necessity to have such furniture in the already minimal amount of rooms they had available. From the wooden drawer Naruto withdrew something that was folded over itself in a deep shade of ebony. Closing the drawer and taking a few steps back, he would slowly unfold the article of clothing until it was straightened out. When it dropped out, the clothing item appeared to be a black trench coat that went past Naruto's hips slightly from just hanging in front of his body. The material of this trench coat at first glimpse may have appeared to be a smooth, uninterrupted material that was quite clearly black in color, but when examined in greater detail it would become apparent that the material was actually feathers interlinked so expertly that they were weaved to have no openings. Now, under normal circumstances, a coat made from a bird's feathers may have been a devastatingly poor choice, but Naruto knew better than that because he personally watched and assisted in making this coat out of the feathers of Shokai himself. The head of crows assured the Uchiha that his feathers alone could stand up to the protective capabilities of a Kekkei Genkei lost to time, the Koton, the steel release. Meaning it would hold strong against blades, kunai, shuriken, and even some low-level jutsu. Zipping the coat up over his bare chest, there would be the slightest peak of crimson-red lining inside of the coat that was meant to keep the body warm and stable should the need arise, with the only requirement being a small feeding of chakra into the gear. Just switching his pair of navy shinobi pants for a similar black pair, Naruto would glance into the mirror with his Mangekyo Sharingan and give a shrug before heading off to meet the old crow, giving waves and nods to those crows that acknowledged their second summoner. It took about 10 minutes for Naruto's leisurely pace to get him to the perch where Shoke could be found on most occasions, and like the start to their usual meetings, Naruto simply gave his boss summon the slightest nod of his head that was the sign that Shoke took to begin with this meeting. Tell me, Naruto, how long has it been that you have been living in our forest now? Don't tell me that you have gone senile in your old age, Oyabun. Naruto asked with a small quirk of his eyebrow and a condescending smirk. Perhaps before this trip to the homeland of his summons, Naruto may have been more formal and respectful than he was at the moment, but with time bred familiarity in this case, and now more than ever, Naruto felt a new sense of kinship with his summons than ever before. When the clear, all too visible twitch that formed on the large crow's brow line started to give a slow throb, Naruto knew he had ruffled the bird's feathers, so that was why when the large bird flapped its impressive wings, causing the bottom of his trench coat to flutter behind him slightly from the pushing pressure caused by the light wind that the wings created, but Naruto barely batted an eyelash. Brat, sometimes I wish I could just pick you up in these here talons and drop you to your death. There was then a period of silence between human and summon, neither of which speaking, instead opting for staring in a test of wills. The ending to which was suddenly broken by their combined laughter that lasted for a few minutes before ultimately the pair fell back into their respective, serious states. Crossing his arms over his chest with a stoic expression plastered on the features of his face, Naruto blew a bang of hair from his vision before regarding Shoke with his Mangekyo Sharingan. We weren't supposed to have a meeting until I was getting ready to head out in another 3 months, so what is it you need? Yes, it had been 32 months, give or take a week or so, since Naruto had left the village to go and train in peace with his summons and without hindrance, just as was the plan. There was no contact or even concern about the hidden leaf in finding him, and it worked in reverse too. During his time in isolation from the world, the young Uchiha kept himself shunned from the world around him, unaware of anything from the hidden villages to the Akatsuki. Every moment he could spare had been infused into strengthening his body, his eyes, and his skills as a shinobi. Right to the point as always, the head of the murder murmured under his breath with a tired sigh, hinted at under those words, and Naruto knew that Shoke made that audible on purpose but made no comment. Anyways, some of the young ones have picked up on some interesting information that gives me reason to be concerned. Tell me, Naruto, do you know anything about the Box of Ultimate Bliss? Box of Ultimate Bliss. Naruto parroted the last 4 words spoken to him with his head curiously tilted to the left, clearly showing that the Uzumaki clan head didn't have the faintest idea of what the aged crow was speaking about, which didn't at all surprise Shoke considering the consequences around that damnable box. That is no surprise considering that the box itself was something of an artifact back during the times of the Sage of Six Paths and the rise of Ninshu. The crow started off immediately catching the attention of the human before him, who was clearly interested in hearing about the father of shinobi. During that time, the Box of Ultimate Bliss was used by Kusugakure to try and take over the world with the box's power to create with a utopia with them at the seat of power, but the Sage of Six Path put an end to that so that the peace Ninshu was meant to create could prosper. Confused but still very much intrigued, Naruto used the pause to pose a question that was itching at the back of his mind. Wait. They attempted to take over the world with a box. A box. No matter how credible that Naruto knew his boss summoned to be the black-haired Uzumaki, just could not help but be baffled by the thought of box of all things leading to a state of domination that would reach across the world. The story tells that the Box of Ultimate Bliss is capable of granting any wish that one may ever conceive. Immortality, wealth, power, none of these things are out of reach for the box. It was this line of thought that drove Kusa to seek it and the other nations to bury the box deep under the earth, of where Kusugakure has now expanded to cover over the past 5 decades. Seeing the look that Naruto was giving him, Shoke just continued on with a more factual statement or two rather than myth and legend. Shaking his head and causing a few of his feathers that naturally rose from talking about the box, Shoke continued on with his tale, a tale that would hopefully keep a young man he saw as his own son out of trouble. It is good to see that you don't buy into that fantasy because the reality is that all of that is a trick to get people to open the box and release the avatar of residing in the box of ultimate bliss, the Satori. What is the Satori exactly? Naruto asked while silently wondering why Shoke was giving him an extended rundown on the history of such an obscure but potentially dangerous weapon that was the box of ultimate bliss, because despite that potential of a long-existing threat, Naruto did not see why it needed to cut into his time. Satori is the puppet that carries out the dangers of the box because its job is to take victims and toss them into the box itself, where once inside the horrors of the box corrupt the minds of its victims until the warping is no longer repairable. And once that process is complete, the box uses its victims as stock so that Satori can continue to be reborn for as many victims as the box has claimed, which is limitless. Naruto, whether he consciously recognized it or not, swallowed at the thought of having to fight an endless slaughter of demon after demon. What is the point of this Oyabun? So far all you have been telling me are stories that mothers would tell their children to keep them from misbehaving. This is tiring my patience. Naruto said with an ever-growing tone of annoyance, a deeper frown slowly crawling across his face, causing the crow to internally frown at the denial of his summoner, but nonetheless he acquiesced and got on with the purpose of this call. An unsettling amount of the little ones have informed me that there has been a stirring among the elemental nations about this very same box. Naturally, this has sprung a certain amount of well-founded concern on my part, so I sent a few scouts to take a look over Kusagaker, and though I am not certain about if this is true, I am certain that there is quite the amount of activity going in and out of a prison located in Kusa, Hazuka Castle. Knowing Naruto was going to question him on why this was important in the grand scale of things, he acted before his subordinate got any more unruly. Quickly he pushed forward the real point of this. I come to you with this because a few crows have reported to me that forces from Kumogakure have been spotted around the area secretly taking information on the caste prison, such as its layout and manpower. As you know, Kumogakure has had a history of being power-hungry and greedy when it comes to things like this, and you have the unique position of being able to insert yourself into the famous blood prison. Slowly Naruto's black eyebrow slowly arched up into the cover of his hanging bangs, a reaction all too telling for the wizened crow. He knew that he had Naruto's attention now, no doubt thanks to the intrigue of possibly meeting the Satori. It was a not-so-secret that Naruto enjoyed a good fight. Oh. And how am I in such a favorable position? Shoke, the son of the Hokage, clan head of the Uzumaki and a member of the fabled Uchiha clan, despite not going out of your way to attain fame, you have built quite the reputation amongst the people of your generation. It is that reputation that has no doubt led to people noticing your disappearance, and a long one for sure. People just may have considered that you have gone rogue. Eyes widening with realization, Naruto's arms uncrossed from his chest and reached into the confines of his trench coat, and out from it he withdrew his headband, unmarked but just not on. I know that we have talked about leaving Konohagakure before, but at this point in time that is just a fantasy world. I am simply not ready, Naruto admitted with a bit of a bitter frown as his hand slowly slid back into his coat to store away the hit I ate, while looking to the crow for some kind of reasoning. Naruto, you misunderstand me. You don't have to leave the village at all, you just need to trick those responsible for transporting prisoners to Hazuka. Make them believe that they have captured. Let them think they are doing their superiors a favor, and then you have your way in. Shoke pushed the subtle thoughts into Naruto's mind and watched as the gears had started to turn in the young human's head, and if the crow could do so, he'd be grinning cunningly. Where the crow could not, Naruto was grinning much like a fox up to a rather fulfilling prank on someone who had antagonized it. Eyes flashing slightly as some of the spiritual power of the forest channeled into his body, Naruto straightened out his posture and regarded his summon with a smirk. You are really sly, but I suppose that is to be expected of someone like yourself who has quite the number of years under your wings. Not giving Shoke a chance to respond, Naruto turned and made way to go and study up on this blood prison before his capture by the hidden grass forces. Wait, Naruto, how are your eyes? Shoke asked with a bit of concern, having heard from Naruto about the pitfalls of his powerful dojutsu when he explained it to both he, Shoke, and Susei upon arriving when they were activated by the presence of the forest. No need to worry, Oyabun. It looks like you were right about Kurohane, because my vision hasn't gotten any worse considering how my eyes have been activated all along. Kurohane's abundant spiritual energy is feeding the Sharingan and is actually placing something like a stasis seal on them, but should I use these eyes outside of this place, then the path to blindness will surely begin. Now then, have a good day. Naruto said with the faintest tugs of a smile on his lips before he walked out of the meeting place just like he had entered it. The distinct sound of the whistling of a strong wind echoed out throughout the field that was littered with soot and sand, with numerous boulders spiking up from the inhospitable ground below. It was so very strange to see such a barren wasteland when only miles away from this spot was the forest of the crows. Naturally, this caused Naruto to wonder if the reason for such a drastic difference was the sheer amount of nutrients the forest would need to run on being sapped from the lands around them. Time to see how far I have come since I first tried to do this. Closing his right eye, the black-haired Uzumaki focused his left eye on a rather large boulder positioned in the center of the desert field and channeled the chakra into his eye. Feeling his Mangekyo pulse with power, Naruto breathed out a simple word that would cause many to shake in fear under the legendary jutsu. Amaterasu. Heavenly illumination. Just a moment later, the rock in the focal point of his vision was engulfed and set ablaze by the legendary black flames produced by the Uchiha bloodline, the Mangekyo Sharingan. Standing still, Naruto watched as his jutsu slowly ate away at the rock until there was nothing left of the rock but a scorch mark burnt into the sand, which was already being covered up by a fresh coating of sand courtesy of the winds. He would sigh after running a few fingers through his hair while mumbling to himself. Still can't get the shape manipulation down, but at least it takes less time for the flames to materialize. Next, Naruto would create a shadow clone and have it lock eyes with him for a few moments before Naruto would mutter the next jutsu gifted to him by his so-called cursed eyes. Tsukuyomi. Moon Reader. Not even moments later were both Naruto and his clone now in an inverted world with all black color aside from the bloody red sky. With Naruto standing there and staring at his clone that was crucified on a pair of hooked-off T-shapes. Taking a simple glance around, Naruto gave a brief nod and dropped the ultimate genjutsu, and hence returning himself to the real world. Okay, now that I have tested those two, let us get on to the grand finale of this little training run. The black-haired shinobi spoke under the howling of the wind while focusing chakra back into the both of his eyes to activate his personal guardian. Susanoo. Tempest god of valor. Suddenly a white, almost shining energy started to gather and build around the Uzumaki, becoming brighter and brighter until it pierced through the gloomy covering of the sandstorm. Slowly the large humanoid, chakra construct started to become visible, which included what appeared to be fur draping off from its shoulders in true cape fashion, while the front of its armor appeared to be more tribal in nature than refined samurai or knight. From the jagged lines of fur and spaces of exposure, it all screamed self-sustained, much like Naruto's own life. Head slowly snapping upwards, there was nothing more defined than those piercing, almost amber-shaded eyes of the mighty Susanoo. The glow of those eyes was only magnified by how there seemed to be a clean-cut head of a massive bear worn over it as a head guard and a trophy. From the angle of the bear's open mouth, it was very difficult to say whether it was the chakra construct that had fangs or it the bear itself, but one thing was for sure. The chakra being slightly released from the shadowy space of the mouth seemed to escape like a light steam, adding to the menacing visage of the tribal warrior. Reaching behind himself, Naruto's will had Susanoo pull what seemed to be a sword's shaft from out behind him, which would fit Naruto's swordsman upbringing, but at the end of the shaft and on both sides were no straight blades but cured outward double axes, giving the massive weapon for blades and a very propeller-like appearance. Slashing one hand forward from his position levitating inside of Susanoo, Naruto caused the weapon to go spinning into the sand before him, and immediately there was a deafening crash and a geyser of sand spewing into the air, causing a layer of sand and debris to fill the impact site from sight. A glimmer of white gleamed through the cover of sand, and it appeared to be something akin to a chakra string. With tension on the chakra tether and another pull back, the weapon came twirling towards Naruto's position and at a dangerous speed. Susanoo's hand quickly came upward and caught the twirling weapon with ease, showing Naruto's lack of concern to be well-founded as he stared down into the chasm created by his attack that seemed to lack an end while sand came pouring into it, making it appear to be a sinking chasm. Taking a deep breath, Naruto slowly let the chakra-creating Susanoo go, and as the being dispersed, Naruto fell towards the ground only to land with a graceful crouch. Pushing back, he would settle on a new position away from the threat of the massive chasm he had just created for the sure footing of the boulder below his feet. Impressive, but nothing I couldn't replicate with ease. The Kyuubi commented from within Naruto, watching through their shared link of senses, and while not openly admitting to such a thing, he was pleased to see that destruction being wielded by his container for once and not against him. Apparently the introduction of the chakra creature caught Naruto slightly off guard, if the uptick in his eyebrow was meant to be any indication. "Oh, I was unaware that you had decided to watch my little test run, Kyuubi," Naruto murmured, slightly not bothered by the voyeur inside of him but rather intrigued as to his reason for doing so. Hearing a distinct scoff coming from the back of his mind, Naruto couldn't help but grin a bit, knowing that the Kyuubi, much like himself, would try to keep a mask up for certain things, and in this case it was to hide his acknowledgement. "Don't get too cocky, ninjan. It is just refreshing to see that power fighting, and not against me." The orange fox would then give off a slight growl as memories of the Uchiha patriarch filled his mind. Already aware of where his tenant was going with that line of thought, Naruto interjected himself before the nine-tailed demon would go recluse and brood in his more dangerous thoughts. "Well, it doesn't matter how overwhelming or precise my attacks can be inside of the blood prison. After some reading up, I learnt that the warden there uses a seal of sorts to cause combustion to prisoners who try and access their chakra." The pseudo-Jinchuriki muttered with the telling of a frown on his face. "And what is so dangerous about that? You are still Uzumaki underneath all that Uchiha, aren't you? Just craft up some of those damnable seals that your ancestors loved so much and destroy that prison." Naturally the Kyuubi no Kitsune would have a natural hate for the idea of prison, be they a human one or the body of a human, the prison of the Biju. Laughing lowly at the words of the prideful beast stored away in his mind, Naruto simply hopped from off his perch on top of one of the many boulders and began to walk back towards the forest of the crows. Hands folded behind his back and a devilish smirk in play on his face, Naruto looked into the desert sky with a very fox-like grin now morphed onto his lips. "Of course. After all, who do you think I am?" Two men walking side by side glanced opposite directions of each other to cover as much ground as possible while also trading small, verbal jabs at each other to pass the time on their patrol. Finally getting fed up with the lack of anything substantial happening, not only this time but God knows how many times before, the one on the left threw his hands up into the air with a groan of exasperation coloring his voice. "Gah, I really hate this shift. It's dark, usually raining or cold, and we never find anything because no else is stupid enough to be out here when it's this dark." The man growled out his anger and punctuated it by kicking a small rock, sending it slamming into a tree base where it fell back to the ground harmlessly. Giving the man a "be quiet" hiss, the second man would slap him on the back of the head, causing it to droop downward and begin to ache harshly. Ignoring the obviously pained look on the first man's face, the second would then proceed to lecture him on their duties and how vital they are. "You idiot, we can't just not do this job and let someone sneak into or around the prison. What if one those idiots from the fruit group try to sabotage Mui-sama's plans, huh? Then who do you think they will throw into those eddies down below? It will be us. It doesn't matter at this point because then at least I will be able to see some action, unlike the past few months. These idiots in the flower group have been saying something about a project that will save all of Kusagakure and we still haven't seen shit." The first man continued on his tirade without concern for the treacherous words uttered from his mouth and for the consequences that would no doubt accompany them should they be heard by the wrong pair of ears. Expecting some kind of scolding but only getting silence, the prison guard would turn to see what was up with his partner, only to find him standing near a cave entrance. The interesting thing, however, was not that there was a cave but the fact that there was a faint light barely escaping from the depths of the cave into the night just outside of the natural shelter. With the second man waiting for his partner to come over, he would try to listen in on whatever was inside of that cave and only be greeted with the crackling of embers. Seeing his teammate in position, both would nod before each drawing a kunai and stepping into the unknown cave. To both men each step felt like an eternity, with the sound of their steps sounding like Class 5 explosive tags to their ears as they got closer and closer to that light source. Thankfully for the psyches of the two Kusa shinobi affiliated with the flower group, they only needed to take a few more steps before the cave widened and they were greeted by the dying light of the campfire. Lowering their kunai but not putting them away, one of the two men walked around the fire and found a person there sleeping without a care in the world. However, this was not just any run-of-the-mill camper. No, this was Naruto Uzumaki or Naruto Uchiha, depending on who you'd ask, which alone was enough to widen the eyes of the one who found him laying there on the floor. I think we just found the ticket that will get us off of this patrol that you hate so much, my friend. The man said to the one that had been so avid about complaining about their assignment, who looked none the more wiser about who he was looking at if the blank look on his face was anything to go by. Yeah, I don't get it. How is picking up some random bum going to get us promoted? Sighing, the Kusa-nin would then reach into his pocket and pull out a bingo book, one that held names of any notable shinobi in the 5 major villages, a standard for any minor village. Thankfully for the man who was confused, the page was already open to Naruto's page. Fool! We are looking at Naruto Uchiha. He has been missing for 2 years and some villages have speculated he had gone rogue. Blinking a few times, eventually the man holding the book would make a small look of realization on his face. Snapping the book shut and looking down at the sleeping black-haired shinobi with a small frown, the jail guard murmured under his breath. This is the kid who beat the Aikibi before it fully transformed in the Chunin exam finals. The man's companion nodded with a small smirk on his lips while his hand would fish out something that looked like a complicated seal that he placed on Naruto's wrists and activated with a flare of chakra. Yes, but this boy is also an Uzumaki, and that means he has both plentiful and potent chakra, just what Mui-sama is looking for. That is why Naruto Uzumaki is our ticket to getting a promotion. Grinning from ear to ear as he envisioned a future in the cozy Hazuka castle surrounded by comfortable beds and warm food, the other man put the book into his coat and moved to help his partner with the lugging of the still sleeping Naruto off to their superiors. Well then, shut up and let's get going. This meal ticket is getting into Mui-sama's hands on his own, now is he. The excitement and downright glee was unmistakable inside of his voice as his eyes almost twinkled with anticipation. His partner would nod with a smile of his own while both looked ahead to the castle looming over the tree line in the night sky, because both of the shinobi were so engrossed with their own thoughts of grandeur and expectations that they missed the look on a very much awake Naruto's face. It was a look of a predator that had just captured its prey and was about to have a very, very satisfying dinner. It was now safe to assume that all the pieces he had to set up were done so perfectly, and all he had to do was wait for the major players reveal themselves.